My name is Dr. Chuck Radis, and I wanted to welcome you to the first of what we hope is an annual event, the Maine-Africa Connection, a conference and community dialogue. And as we talked about the goals of the conference, it's fairly simple. We wanted to offer a stage and a venue for people to tell their stories. You will hear stories from the immigrant group, the immigrant population, and from people who are passionate about working with immigrants as they share their successes and struggles. Through this, we want to have a better understanding of what we need to go forward and how to build a stronger community in general. But first, I would like to thank the volunteers who put this conference together. It was primarily undergraduate UNE students and postgraduate UNE students. I'd like to give them a round of applause for putting this together. This came together on a very short timeline and a small budget, and we're grateful that we've been able to work out refreshments and lunch, and we hope that you enjoy the day. Secondly, I wanted to quickly thank the numerous University of New England clubs and other organizations who lent their support, and in some case financial support, towards the success of this conference. This includes the University of New England Center for Excellence in Interprofessional Education, the UNE College of Osteopathic Medicine, or UNICOM, the UNE Student Government Association, the Global Health Club, the Wilderness Medicine Club, the Channels Program, which gave us a nice donation, the UNE Office of Multicultural Affairs and Diversity, and lastly, the Maine-African Partnership for Social Justice. So Portland is an unusual Maine city, and for a handful of you who are from away, came up from Boston, you may not realize that we're the home of the second oldest continuous high school in the country, and that the amount of diversity in our schools is really quite large. In most of the remainder of Maine, outside of Lewiston-Auburn area, Maine is not that diverse, but in the school where my two children went to school, King Middle School, there were 28 different languages spoken. At Portland High School, there were students from 41 different countries. And so the history of Portland is one of immigration over and over many, many decades. What some of you may or may not know is that the entry point, at least during a part of our history in Portland, was House Island. On House Island, this is one of the houses that survives, but behind it was a small public health hospital that operated between 1909 and 1938. This was a period of time when, in a way, Portland was kind of like the Ellis Island of New York City, and hundreds and even thousands of immigrants came in to Maine through Ellis Island. They were evaluated for infectious illnesses, they were quarantined if they needed to be, and eventually this was their opportunity to move into Portland and through the rest of the state. And actually, let me go back to that slide, because it's interesting. When I first moved out to Peaks Island in the mid-1980s, the daughter of the last public health physician was still alive. She'd written a little book on, I was the daughter of the public health doctor, about 12 pages, and she remembers rowing with her father across from House Island to Peaks Island to go to school before eventually she went to Portland High School. And so our earlier immigrants into Maine, this is probably taken in front, I believe, of Portland High School, the Irish, the Italians, each of them worked in their own way through really Portland's motto of resurgam, resurgence, rebuilding, rising from the ashes. And Portland has had 4 rebirths. We've had 4 terrible fires over the centuries, and immigrants have often really been involved in the rebuilding. They've been part of the vibrancy and the reinvention of Portland over decades and even centuries now. In our latest wave of immigrants, after the waves of immigrants from Italy and from Ireland, are now people from the Middle East, and more recently from Africa. They're doing what immigrant populations have done ever since we've become a city. They're settling, they're meeting challenges, they're sometimes meeting discrimination, they're meeting limitations, but they're also overriding many of those limitations. They're building homes, they're getting jobs, they're starting their own businesses, and eventually they're doing what all immigrant groups have done in the history of Portland. They're moving into positions of leadership. They're running for city government. And I would leave you as my beginning speaker, is a natural speaker to take up this topic, is that really the more recent immigrant population is part of a natural wave of assimilation into Maine. And it's changing it really for much the better. We're an older state. In fact, we're the oldest state in the country. There's a lot of retirees here. We don't have as many young people as many other states do. And by this new wave of immigration, this welcoming of immigration here, we're reinventing Portland and Lewiston Auburn and Maine in general. Our first speaker, Tarlan Amadov. He is the program manager of Catholic Charities. He is in the manager of the Maine Refugee and Immigrant Services. Catholic Charities is really one of the largest nonprofits in the United States. It's number 5 behind the Salvation Army. It's a huge organization which does wonderful work in the state of Maine. We're privileged to have Tarlan Amadov this morning, and I look forward to learning more about his work. Let's welcome Tarlan.
Good morning. Salam alaikum. Здравствуйте. Здравствуйте. So my name is Tarlan Amadov. I was born and raised in Azerbaijan. It's a former Soviet Union republic. I immigrated here to Maine over 10 years ago, not necessarily by the choice, but my life has been tremendously changed. Changes was in every minute, in every second. Challenges, hardships, of course, is there. But the hardship, challenges, teach me a lot. Through my own experience, which is similar to millions of people who immigrated to the United States, has the same similarity that people experience here daily, through their hardship and from hard learning. Today I'm here to share my story, which is similar with many, many stories of people who is here, but also has their own differences. My goal today is walk you all through the shoes of people who is immigrating here. My experience in America with what I do today and my achievements that I have been going through would show you the success for each of the people who is really dreaming about this country. So just for a second, imagine you have no food, you have no friends, you have no family, you have no work. You are in the place which is, the future is unknown to you. What kind of help will be? What kind of motivation will move you forward? Imagine you don't speak any English. You are here. Everybody speaks in foreign language for you. And you have to learn. You walk in the cold place, and that's exactly what we see today. It's cold. You walk miles to get your food, to get your pharmacy, to go to your work, because you don't have a transportation. This is we all starting our life here. There is only a few resources. You use your food stamp, you use your church to get some food pantry, and you survive. But you have a dream. As President Bill Clinton said, we still believe in a place called America. That was exactly what gave me strength to move on. A dream and hope. The first day of my life in state of Maine in Portland was very interesting. That's what I would like to share with you. So it was a very rainy day. It was in September of 2003. I walked out from my home. I was invited by our friends to stay for some time. So I went out. City is small, much smaller than where I lived before. Really, something very strange here. I have no place to go. I have no family, exactly what I was talking before. I have no friends that I can knock the door. But I have thoughts. I have to prevail all of these difficulties. And I did. So I started looking for work. There was no work available in the beginning. So I thought I have to knock the doors of the places they may hire me. With my knowledge of many languages, I speak about 7 languages, helped me a lot to do my start. So the first place was Catholic Charities, which allow me to volunteer with them. The place where I'm now working, it's Refugee and Immigration Services. I was volunteering about 7 months with the program. It was really a lot of adventures for me. A lot of things that I learned, which I never been learning before. And through 10 years, I had an opportunity to grow from volunteer to be a program director. And that was a success for me. Learning hard. Of course, I have to learn hard to know exactly how to navigate system, how to go to the doctor, how to learn the language, how to shop, how to make my tax returns and being a good citizen, and fulfilling my dream. Of course, I have a new life. Today, I have a new home that I live in it. I have so many new friends, which I'm proud of it. I have a job, of course, I just talked, and I have a new homeland, which called United States of America. Today, I am an American father who has 2 beautiful children, son and daughter, wife, has a home, has a work, and has a purpose to live. I feel so much successful. And it's because of, with the limited resources we have in the community, and with the help of what we have here from all community, I could fulfill my dreams and my hope. So now I'm going to talk about my program that I work for. The Refugee Immigration Service of the Catholic Charities is only a place that serve and allocate refugees from overseas. Our mission is make self-sufficient and help the people in need. Let's think, what's the definition of refugee? Is the person who has been forced to leave their country in order to escape the war, persecution, and natural disaster. The friend of ours from Tennessee office says, to be called a refugee is the opposite in insult. It is a badge of strength, courage, and victory. Really, a badge of strength, courage, and victory. You should have this all qualification to prevail all the problems that you will see every day, every minute. I would share also about global facts about refugees. Today we have, in the global scale, worldwide 15.2 million refugees. The US has a mission to relocate every year so much refugees in the United States. This is a proud of doing this for many, 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 many years and decades, because this is a country, this is the land of the immigrants. So every year we have President of the United States, with consultation of the Congress, to allocate the numbers for refugees to be allocated or admitted to the United States. For the last fiscal year 2014, we have allocation of 70,000 people. So you would think, how many people are coming through that program? So US Department allocating for the state of Maine 300 refugees. And I can tell in the last few years, about 75% of all allocation was the African immigrants or African refugees. So this is the level of admission by the continents, and you can see from the Near East, we have 33,000 people, Africa 15,000 people, East Asia 14,000 people, Latin America and Caribbean 5,000, Europe and Central Asia 1,000, and about 2,000 for unallocated reserves. Just think about 48% of under 18 years old, 46% of women and girls. It is vulnerable population in the world. They have the same things. They have no families, no homes, no rights, no governments, no protection. They're all fleeing their country to the refugee camps. This is the Mainers for the last 2013, and you can see how these numbers are. We have over 216 people last year from Africa. We have 191 person came from Iraq. Through our services, we help them to be housed. We help them with the initial food and clothing. We help them to go for the schools, enroll in the adult education. We help them with employment services, important things, cultural orientation, and community orientation. We help them with the medical referrals, and most important, helping them to find the community resources. And we give them hope and fulfilling their dreams. So who we serve? The refugees who primarily allocated from the overseas to state of Maine. We also help the refugees who was allocated to other places, but then decided to come here, which we call secondary migrants, and we work with the granted asylees. As I mentioned before, we have few resources, but great success. Here, I would like to share with our mentoring program. A year ago, the program decided, through our research, we found that we need to establish a new program for the new Mainers youth who are really need to be mentored. So our mentoring program, which is really helped for 20 refugee youth last year to find better job, to find better education, and to find their future bright. So this is one of our refugee clients with his mentor, and there Ahmed talking about his dream and his hopes. We have also a very famous program called American Friends. When the refugee family is matching with the American friends who help them to walk into the success in this country. So, by just spending 2 hours in this mentoring or American Friends, we can help new Mainers to succeed. The president said, there is not Black America, or White America, or Latin America, or Asian America. There is a United States of America. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tarlan.
18 minutes.
Our next speaker, Jeff Thaler. Jeff is the founder and director of the Williams College Experiential Educational Program. Now, what this involves is enabling college students to live with a host family and work in the ELL classrooms of Portland schools and adult education, as well as in public health clinics. He's helped break down some of the barriers that often happen from town and gown, where universities are often very separate from the communities they live in. And Jeff also teaches energy and climate change policy at the Maine Law School and lawyers for the University of Maine. Thank you, Jeff.
Good morning. Welcome, everybody. It's cold outside, and so I want to use some of my time this morning to get your blood going, get a little exercise in. This is a public health conference sponsored, and so I want to give you 3 free, no charge prescriptions this morning for how to be healthier, safer, more welcoming, and also to fight some insidious diseases such as bigotry, prejudice, stereotyping. And not just of immigrants, but of others as well, because there's too much of it even here in Maine and in Portland. And so we have to work to cure these diseases, and we have to do it together. So the goal is to not just have no child left behind, but to have no one left behind. We need to build a city, a state, a nation of neighbors, indivisible, with liberty and justice. And by justice, I'm referring to social justice, which is where everybody here can achieve their full potential for all. So let's roll up our sleeves. I have this hat on, not out of disrespect. I know this used to be a church, I'm guessing, by the architecture in here. But you'll get the point when I reference it later. If you can't read it, says Maine on the hat. But let's roll up our sleeves and get to work for 18 minutes. So the question I have for you is this. Is this motto accurate? Is Maine really the way life should be for all? The other motto Maine has is Dirigo, which means I lead. And the question is Maine leading in these areas? So here's the first exercise. Close your eyes, please. And imagine you're at home. You get a knock on your door, and you open the door. I'm sure you've done it many times, and there's a visitor there. You'd try to make them feel welcome, would be my guess, at home, and extend hospitality. You wouldn't respond with insults, slurs, yells, or derision because of the way they look. So open your eyes now. Portland, Maine is our home. The greater Portland area is our home. So why isn't everybody acting toward others as they would in their own home? The golden rule. And if you think it's not a problem here in Maine, unfortunately, or in Portland even, you're wrong. Adults, high school students, even elementary school students are taunted because of the way they look, of the clothes they wear, their religion, color, class, even if they wear a headscarf. And there was a report that was just issued within the last couple of months for the Hudson Foundation, prepared by several other organizations. There's a lot of text here, so I'm not going to read it all, but the bottom line is that this was surveying students in the greater Portland area, is that racism is pervasive. It's degrading, it's deeply disturbing, and it's not just African Americans or African immigrants who are hearing it, it's people from all over, and white students hear it as much or more than others. So this is what's going on here in Portland. And the question then is, what are we going to do about it? But also, why? So why is there this racism? Is it inherited? No, it's not inherited. Oops, there goes the E. I need to stay where I'm standing here. That woke you up, right? Get it over here. So, you know, if a 2-year-old is not racist, so why is it that 10-year-olds in elementary schools are saying things? Why are high school kids? And it seems to be, is it a learned behavior, or is it really a lack of education and interaction? So this was a quote from Solzhenitsyn that I liked, but it also talks about intolerance, and we're going to come back to intolerance in a minute. And it also may be, my opinion is that some people feel threatened by change. Dr. Radis talked about some of the changes in Tarlin as well, but I think it's also due to a change in our society relating to distancing and isolation. Because even in a country in the US today that's far more ethnically and racially diverse, networked, connected than ever before, we have people spending 8 hours a day on average in front of TV screens, computer screens, and their smartphone screens, and not having direct connection with others. And ironically, despite being so connected, we know less about our neighbors. We know less about people who are different from us and are more prone to xenophobia, stereotyping, and indifference to what happens to other people. So indifference is something that Elie Wiesel is an expert in, who you're familiar with, and this was from a speech that he gave in the 90s. And the problem with indifference is it renders the other person as an abstraction, as somebody that you don't care about. So we have to get over that. We have to get over the us versus them to get at these viruses of bigotry and prejudice, and that pollute our children and our society today, especially given national trends. So here's one national trend, which is that in 30 years, the whites in America are going to be a minority. They're going to be under 50%. Now, Maine, it's going to take longer because we're still the whitest or the second whitest state in the country, but we're going to get there eventually. But the point is that this is a national trend, it's happening, and we need to embrace it and be ready for it. And then there's trends in this state. So this was Portland High School a number of years ago, and this is Portland now. And so this is a trend that's happening, and that we're here to talk about today and celebrate, but also that we need to build on. And so Portland, as has been mentioned, it's been a refugee resettlement city for 30 years. There were 12 originally in the country. So thousands of refugees and immigrants have arrived here in Portland, and from over 80 countries, and in the schools, over 60 languages are spoken from different countries. But keep in mind, I'm giving you statistics, but behind every statistic is a person. And only by entering into and getting behind the statistics in the individual lives can really the world change for the better. So let's talk about how. So these are 3 people, one of whom you may recognize in the middle. But the one on the left is Jacob Bronowski. Bronowski was a scientist, a writer. He also created a documentary called The Ascent of Man for the BBC 40 years ago, where he's standing there is a pond in front of Auschwitz, the concentration camp. And in that water that he's standing in were flushed the ashes of 4 million people, including members of his family. And what Bronowski is saying in that clip right there at that moment, he bends down and puts his hand into the pond, is this: we have to close the distance between the push-button order and the human act. We have to touch people. Now, he talked about the push-button order years before there were computers and mouses. So he talks about touching people, so that led me to Bruce Springsteen, who's in the middle, and his song, Human Touch, which I happen to have, I was playing in my car like a week ago, and I thought, okay, I got to use this. Because what he sang, and I'm sorry, I can't do Bruce justice, but is, I ain't looking for prayers or pity, I ain't coming around searching for a crutch, I just want someone to talk to, and a little of that human touch. And then the gentleman on the right is Ralph Waldo Emerson, the poet, who said the only way to have a friend is to be one. And you be one by the human touch, not a mouse click. And it requires listening, really listening and not hearing, requires empathy, which is walking in the shoes of another person, and to get out of your own zone and not pity or a crutch. And it's important to put names with faces so that when you see a quarter-mile away, this woman, Najam, runs a restaurant. It's called Babylon. I hope everyone here who goes to UNE will go have a meal at Babylon, because if you do, you can sit there and ask her where she's from, and she'll tell you. And she'll tell you about her journey, which is really incredible, and what she hopes to do and achieve here in this country. So that when I see a woman in a hijab, I think of Nadia, I think of Ikram, I think of Najam. I don't say, oh, there's X or Y, or there's somebody wearing something that looks foreign. Or if I see Wanjun or Piran, I see them as people, not as Asian men. So here's my 3 prescriptions for you. I promised you that, and I'm going to run out of time, so I'm going to move along quickly. The first is the program that Dr. Radis mentioned, which is a program I run for Williams College students, where each lives with a host refugee or immigrant family here in Portland, works with either in ELL programs in Portland schools or at public health clinics, such as Community Counseling Center or Portland Community Health Center. And the goal is to not do a field study, but to actually immerse themselves in the lives of people who are different from themselves, learn about resettlement, adaptation to a different culture, literacy, race, forces like that, and to be a bridge between classroom time and real life, but also a bridge for the families to the new language and culture and practices that they're learning. And so the themes of the program, by the way, you can see more about the program in a TED Talk I gave 3 years ago here in Portland. You can look it up online, but I don't have time today. Silence is suspect. So dialogue is important, connecting with people, because each person has a story to tell. Indifference, unacceptable. You got to walk in the shoes of the other person, and direct immersion in the unfamiliar are essential, getting outside of your comfort zone. So some quick examples from the program and lessons learned. These were 3 host sisters for one Williams student, and they had hosted another Williams student who was from Brooklyn, African-American woman, a couple of years earlier. And for both students, they borrowed headscarves to wear because it was cold, among other things. Also, one of them went to the mosque school. But the students found, even the one from Brooklyn, that they were treated differently when they went to the mall. They were treated differently when they walked down streets in Portland. And it wasn't because she was black, it wasn't because she was from Brooklyn, it's because people thought she was Muslim. This is Jason to the right, Alain and Murray. Alain was going to be here today, maybe he is. Hopefully you get a chance to meet him, from the Congo. But this was a picture in a news story. It turned out that, I didn't know this until after I read the news story, Jason's grandparents survived the Holocaust from World War II and came to America. Alain and Murray survived the Holocaust in the Congo that few people know about. They were in jail, they were sentenced to death, and they had to flee for their lives literally in the middle of the night and leave 2 of their children in the Congo. And they connected and bridged 60 years by the experiences of their family. And then this is to the left, Edna, a Somali Muslim. To the right, Pushpanjali, who is Hindu from Nepal and studying at Williams. And so this was from Push's final essay. And the point is that the 3 cultures, being US, Somali, Muslim, and Hindu Nepalese, is that ultimately the common denominator is that there should be no room for harsh judgments, criticisms of others, or superiority. So that's ultimately the takeaway from the program that I try to do. And I know the model works. It can work at other schools. It can work in other places. And ultimately, here we are at University of New England in what I'll call the miracle mile, because within a mile of this building, you can go to preschool all the way up to graduate school. So if you can't use this mile as an incubator for new ideas, where else can you do it in the United States? And that takes me to a second program that was written up in the New York Times about 10 days ago called Welcoming America, Building a Nation of Neighbors, which is trying to build bridges between immigrants and US-born Americans. And what's interesting is that there are 27 cities and counties so far in the US who are participating in the program, but nothing in Maine. There's 17 states, including New Hampshire and Massachusetts, in the program, but not the state of Maine. So are we leading? I don't think so. So what they do is they focus first on the community, the host community, the receiving community, they call it, and then they work to bridge with the immigrants. And again, you'll have a chance to read this later, maybe online. But the point is that to get people reflecting on their values and biases and experiences and of those of others, and then to try to overcome the stereotypes that exist. And remember, as Tarlin said, many immigrants and refugees arrive here with skills and they want to be employed, but they can't automatically translate them. Alain was a professional in the Congo. He arrived here, and when I met him, he was a janitor because he was not allowed to apply the credentials he had from the Congo to here. And so ultimately, again, they want to be productive and have that social justice achieve their potential. So that takes me to, and the economic health of that is that immigrants are starting more businesses than native-born Americans at this point. It's in our interest to support and encourage more immigration, as has been going on in Lewiston and in Maine. And so this is my third prescription, the art of listening one-on-one. And so this is going to require you to stand up. Okay, everybody stand up, please. I want you to take, I'm going to run out of time, so you're going to have 30 seconds each to talk to the person next to you, ask them their name, where they're from, and just one incident that really upset them that they remember. Go. I'm going to have to yell louder. All right, everybody, stay standing, though. Stay standing, please. I want you to stay standing, and you'll be able to continue that conversation at the break, but I'm watching the clock, and she's counting me down here. So that wasn't so hard, and it's easier than maybe starting a program like I did with Williams, and maybe the Welcoming America, but I want to be proud of the fact that I'm in Maine, and I think you want to be as well. So in closing, I think dirigo means not just I lead, but it also means, I looked up the Latin, I guide, to be a guide. And so you can help new Mainers navigate an uncertain, complicated world. And again, as Tarlin was saying, imagine that you are forced to flee your home here in Portland, go travel 5,000 miles away to a country where you don't speak the language and can't pursue your craft. How would you feel? You would welcome someone being a guide for you that first day, for Tarlin, for example, or others when they arrive. So this is my formula. U plus ME is not University of Maine, but U plus me equals us, or the US, indivisible, with liberty and justice, with listening and empathy, and guiding and welcoming for all, and that's for everybody. So it's going to have to start right here, right now, this morning, today. Let me ask you a couple questions. And with the thought in mind of human touch, hold the hand of the person next to you if you could. Because we're in a church, right? Old church. So let me ask you a couple questions. If we can go to the moon in under 7 years, then can we make Maine a welcoming home for all to succeed? Yes. Boy, that's not very loud. I mean, there's 150 people here. You're going to have to do better. Can we create opportunities for students and adults to live, work with, and guide newcomers? Yes. How about yes, we can? And, all right. And can we start the Welcoming America Dialogue and Bridge effort here at UNE in Portland, in Maine? Yes, we can. All right. And can you, with a smile, a handshake, and a shared journey, go mouseless for a few days and make 3 new friends a day, starting today? Yes, you can. So now let's get going. And here's a $100 tip to go with my 3 prescriptions. There's no better time to start than right now. So you can do it at breaks. Welcome everybody to Maine, and thank you all very much. Have a good morning.
So now that we've been up,
that was a good job.
it really is amazing, Stevens Avenue here. I would include that if you wanted to be buried here also, at the end of all your schooling, there's a cemetery here too. So you can really go, from the breadth of life all the way through.
Forward.
Our next speaker, Pius Ali, he reminds me in some ways of someone you may not know, Donna Damon from Chebeague Island. Anyone actually here in the audience know or hear of Donna? Yeah. So Donna, some years ago, I met Donna at the end of her 17th day in a row that she had attended a meeting. Every meeting was a different organization that she belonged to on Chebeague Island. It's amazing how many organizations there may be in small islands, but she'd gone 17 days in a row with going to a different meeting. And Pius reminds me of that incredibly. If you read through his biography online, you can see all the things that he is currently involved with. And I won't repeat that record of it, but that really there are not enough days or nights in the week to accomplish all that he's done in the 10 years that he has immigrated to the United States from Ghana. Elected to the school board this past fall, which is really an evolution of leadership in our immigrant population, moving into positions in which they're going to be affecting public policy in Maine. So I hope and enjoy our talk with Pius, and thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Pius Ali, like he said. May I see by hand if you are an immigrant? That's cool. Let me see by hand if you are the child of an immigrant. Let me see by hand if you are the grandchild of an immigrant. Almost everyone. Let me see by hand if you know someone who is an immigrant. So almost everyone in this room know an immigrant either as a relative or someone that they know from a distance. Migration has been happening for centuries. People move from one part of the world to another for so many reasons. It could be the cause of war, or famine, or there are people who just wanted to move somewhere to make their lives better. I am an immigrant from Ghana. And when immigrants travel or when immigrants migrate, they tend to survive by evolving. You have to evolve to adapt to the new place that you are, and then you survive. And then you learn how to live. I was raised by my grandparents. At the age of 5, I live in a household where my grandfather and his cousins and his brothers run what we call madrasa. Do we all know what madrasa is? So madrasa is an Arabic word for school. However, this type of school is not your normal school. It's a school where young people are brought to learn Islam. My grandfather and his brothers ran a home school where people in my community bring their kids to live with us. And my parents sent me back to my grandparents to be raised alongside other kids who I am not related with, like by blood, but by virtue of being in this house of my grandparents, we became family. But I had a problem. I didn't want to, when it's time for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, we are grouped either by age or by size. You can see that I'm a small man. So I was put in the group by my age, but also I'm the smallest amongst the group. So during breakfast, we will sit around a big bowl or plate of food, and we will eat it. And the same thing at lunch, the same thing at dinner. I was still having a problem with that because I can't eat fast, and by the time the food will finish, I have eaten less, and I'll be hungry. And there's a rule, there's no snacks in between. So you have to go without snack. You have to wait for the next meal. And if So I have problem with technology too. If you're not able to find something to eat, you'll be hungry. So I kept getting hungry all along. And my grandmother realized that, so she would stash something small on the side for me. And then I will go and eat it. I think down the road, she realized that she's not doing me any favor. So one day she sat me down and said to me, I realize that you're having problem with food or eating with your peers, but I think you have to adopt. You have to learn how to live with your peers in this house, because that is how we live here. We all live together, everybody eats, you eat with everybody. You don't go and you're not going to have anything on the side. So I adopted. At the age of 30, I found myself an immigrant once again. This time I'm not migrating from my parents' home to my grandparents' home. I migrated from Ghana to the Bronx in New York. And the first day I went to, I was traveling from one part of the Bronx to the other. I took the public transportation. That was the first time ever I was going to be in a bus in the US. In Ghana, if you are a young person and you are getting into a bus, and a young person in that sense means that anybody who's older than you, you are young to that person. So if you have a friend or a cousin or a sibling who is like 2 days or 3 days older than you, you are still young. The person is older than you. And if the person is even older, an older person, then you are like a child to that person. The person can send you, go get me a cup of tea, do this, and you do it. You don't even wait for the person to ask. If you see that an older person is moving around, you have to help them. So I was getting into the bus, and there was this older lady with lots of grocery bags, and she was coming off the bus, and I was going up. And out of the compassion and the person that I was or I am and how I was raised, I wanted to help. So I reached out for her bag. Before I would say, "Can I help you?" she yelled, "Don't touch my bag." And it took me a second to realize, hold on a second, you cannot do that here. And everybody in the bus was looking at me. From then on, I learned that in New York, you don't take back in order to help somebody. Maybe if the person asks you for help, you might want to give it a second thought before you go on to help. So once again, I learned how to live in a different environment. At the age of 44, I found myself in Portland, Maine. I ran a campaign which was mostly supported and fueled and energized by young people, one of whom is sitting here. I was elected to the school board. In the process of doing that, I made history. I became the first African-born immigrant to ever be elected into any public office in Portland, Maine, probably in the whole state of Maine, and also a few in the US. I was also the first Muslim born outside the US to be elected into any public office in Maine, and very few in the US. I found myself in the school board in a different process than what I know how to do. It is a process that I'm still learning. I am trying to adapt so that I can use whatever it is that pushed me to do what I want to do in helping young people in Maine, in Portland, in all the neighborhoods that I live in, through my work in the school board. I have a belief that every child should have the support and tools that they need so that they can grow up and be productive members of their community. And that is what is pushing me in doing whatever I'm doing. And you may ask, when I was introduced, he said that, I'm not getting your name, so I'm sorry. Dr. Chuck said that I have done a lot of things within 10 years. There is a methodology that I followed. I didn't know I was following that until I look back and say, hold on a second, how did I do that? And in all my experience working here in Portland, Maine, there's one instance that when I look at that situation critically, it's hard all the methodology that I have lived through, which is evolve, adopt, and adapt. So when I first came to Maine, I worked in restaurants for a couple of years. But I realized that I have a family, and working in a restaurant may not necessarily send me to where I want to go. So I found an advert in the newspaper looking for someone who have the energy to work with young people. I wasn't sure if I could do that, but I was looking for a job. And I was looking for something better than me working in restaurants. Not that working in a restaurant was a bad thing, but I wanted something different. So I applied for the job. I didn't get hired because I do not have a degree in social services. My background back home in Ghana was working with the media. I did a lot of photojournalism. I covered news and many other events. So the person who was hired after 2 weeks left the job because she got someone somewhere who offered her more money. So the program manager did call me and ask me, do you want to take this job? I said yes. That job changed my life for better. Not in terms of monetary or money or anything, but simply because it connected me with and to a lot of young people who became my teachers. I learned a lot from the young people that I work with. How did that happen? When I first got to the job, I did my orientation. I was given all the steps on how to be an effective adult working with young people. However, at the back of my head, I have my own beliefs, my own social and cultural belief, and it was very conservative, where an adult speaks and the child have to listen. And then I found myself, do you all know where Riverton Park is? Do you know the reputation of Riverton Park? All right, I'm not going to share that with you. You may have to find that on your own. But I found myself at Riverton Park. And there's a lot of young people. Riverton Park is like a sample. Like if you are a researcher and you want to know how Portland or Maine is changing, and you happen to be at Riverton Park, it's like a gold mine. You don't have to go somewhere else. There is people from different parts of the world. They all live at Riverton Park. And, but I have something in common. I'm a Muslim. I am an immigrant. I am a minority. I'm all the things that all these young people are at Riverton Park. In the process of my working there, I realized that something was missing. What was it? There was no connection between me and these young people, even though on paper they should connect to me. There is a woman who was working there. She was the site coordinator, and I was the assistant site coordinator. Her name is Anna Aloko. Anna had a very wonderful relationship with these young people. The moment they walk into the door, nobody talks to me. They all go towards Anna. And I asked myself, how can I be like Anna? I stepped back, got outside myself, and created a mental picture of myself, watching myself work, and see that I was not doing well because the kids that I was supposed to serve are not connecting with me. So I watched what Anna does, and I took it and changed it, turned it into what will work for me. And the rest is history. I've worked with kids from many different backgrounds, not just immigrant kids, all over Portland and to some extent, southern part of Maine. I have connected with many kids in many small towns, all the way up to Augusta. I've done workshops. I have literally become the guru of young people around Portland. And all in all these things that I have done is around those three methodologies. I try to evolve, I try to connect, and I try to adapt and move on and do things that I have learned along the way. There is a lot of programs here in Portland that I'm connected with. I would suggest that those of you who are here and want to serve, want to help, all these programs here work with a lot of young immigrants and non-immigrants alike. The first one is Purple Street Teen Center. Is that me? They run a shelter for teenagers. There's a lot of immigrant kids there. And there's a lot of kids from all over the state of Maine. And they run a day center. You can volunteer there. You can reach out and be a buddy with all the kids who are there. You can go there and have lunch with them. And then there's a Parkside Neighborhood Center. It's on around the Parkside neighborhood. It's also a place that you can volunteer. I think they do some things with UNE, but they still need more volunteers. And there is the Kin Fellows. It's a program that I co-founded with the NWACP of Portland. We work with a lot of young people, most of them minorities, to help them figure out who they are and empower them to speak for themselves. And there's the Portland Housing Authority, who have a program called the Cheetah Project. They are based at Riverton Park and 3 other neighborhoods. You can also reach out to them. They need a lot of volunteers who can help young people with their homework, and also they need somebody to look up to and talk to. And then Portland Public Schools Multilingual and Multicultural Center also have a program called Make It Happen. They are in all 3 high schools. They do help students, immigrant and minority students, do their schoolwork, and they prepare them for college. You can volunteer for them as well. And then there is the Portland Mentoring Alliance. They are based in Portland High School, which is the second oldest running high school, right, in the country. So you see, you can make history whilst volunteering. They're looking for mentors, a lot of mentors. I'm a firm believer of mentoring, but I cannot mentor all the kids. So I would love to see a lot of you volunteering to mentor. And like Talan said, it's only maybe 2 hours out of your day. You can do that once a week or once a month to mentor somebody who needs someone to mentor them and direct them towards the right path, so that they will become useful and successful future members of their communities. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker, Dr. Sheila Davis, is the Chief Nursing Officer at Partners in Health. She's an adult nurse practitioner. Her focus is in HIV, AIDS, and infectious diseases, and she's had an active clinical practice at the Massachusetts General Hospital Infectious Disease Outpatient Clinic since 1997. We're very, very pleased that she's driven up from Boston with her daughter today to take part in our conference, and I give you Dr. Sheila Davis.
I don't think he has it. You have the clicker? Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here today. And I want to tell a little bit about my journey to a global citizen. And I'm going to start by telling you a story and then hopefully bring it back to why I'm here. So in 1 week in June of 2012, I was in Malawi. And Malawi is a country of about 17 million people, landlocked in sub-Saharan Africa. Beautiful country, one of the most beautiful countries in the world. And I was there doing site visits, traveling to a lot of the different clinics with a Malawian nurse, and we came to this one particular clinic, kind of in the middle of nowhere on the Mozambican border. And we pulled up, and it was kind of a concrete falling down structure, And we went in, and the nurse came in. The nurse midwife came. She had heard we were there and kind of rushed in to welcome us, you know, so wonderfully. And through our conversation, found out she had been there for about probably 18 hours, had delivered 4 to 5 children, or 4 to 5 babies. And also there's a long line of adults and children when we came in that we saw that she, as the only healthcare provider in the entire clinic, she was going to have to see all these people too before she was relieved. So as we were talking, she was looking a little nervous, and the Malawi nurse I was with said, "Oh, you know, do you have to be somewhere?" And she said, "Oh, a woman just came in who is in labor, and I should probably go down there." And other than feeling horrible that she had left this laboring woman to come see us, we followed her down to this other little kind of concrete building structure. And we walked in, and there was 3 women, three to five metal beds, and there was a woman in labor on the floor. It was a very kind of stark structure. You know, a lot of the things were kind of broken and fallen down, but it was extremely clean. She had a crisp white uniform on, which I can't keep white on any day, even walking through town. So I'm always impressed that she had worked all night and looked so professional. And this woman was laboring on the floor. Her sister was beside her. And if anybody's ever given birth or worked with this, if someone is in labor and they don't want to move, you don't move them. So we didn't move her. And literally probably within 5 minutes, she gave birth on the floor. And this midwife skillfully got on the floor, help bring this child into the world. It was a little girl. The mother's sister wrapped her in this old cloth that she had brought with her, because we don't have cloth in this clinic to wrap babies in, and wrapped her in the cloth, and the mother kind of silently went up and laid on the bed and went to sleep. We were all excited, obviously. It was a little girl. She was beautiful. And then we kind of heard the story of her mother, who had walked about probably 3 to 7 hours was what we had heard to get to this clinic. She came to this clinic because she wanted to have her child be delivered by a skilled birth attendant or by a skilled midwife. So she made the choice, and the long, travel to walk when you're 9 months pregnant was obviously a very difficult thing for anybody. So she stayed there. We had the baby, we wrapped the baby up, checked the baby out. The baby looked to be healthy. The mother had not had any prenatal care, so we had kind of no idea about her HIV status. Soon after that, we had to go on to another health center, and I never found out what happened to that little girl or that mother. So 6 days later, I come back to Boston. I travel about 80% of the time, so I'm very used to airplanes. Travel back to Boston. I live in a split family house, and it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I get a text message from my neighbor saying, "I think Pamela's in labor." And she was pregnant, her second child. So we thought we had plenty of time. So I went over, my daughter was going to go to stay with their 3-year-old, went over, and she was looked uncomfortable, which is not uncommon if you're in labor, but they were dilly-dallying a little bit, and I thought, they need to kind of get things moving, because I don't want to have the baby here. And probably within a matter of about 10 minutes, I saw that she obviously was in much more active labor than any of us had thought. So I said, we got to go now. Let's get in the car. We got to go. So on the way out to the car, she started screaming. And it was imminent she was going to give birth in our driveway. So I yelled, so our houses are connected, so I yelled to my daughter, I said, call 911. We happened to have 2 nurses who worked in Haiti staying with us. And I yelled for one of them to come down and said, you got to come help me. We're holding her up in the driveway. She's screaming. My daughter's on the phone with 911 saying, you have to come now. And they were saying, who's with the mother? And she said, my mother, she's a nurse, but she doesn't know what she's doing, so please come. A lot of faith in me. When she was right. So I kept on saying, don't push, don't push. That was all I kind of remembered was don't push, don't push. Because I'd worked in infectious disease for almost 20 years, so we don't do a lot of baby delivering. So we're holding her up, and I'm thinking, oh my God, please don't have this baby right here. Please don't have this baby. So within 2 minutes to 5 minutes, 2 ambulances show up, paramedics, the whole, we have the entire group, 8 medical providers jump out, get her in, get her on the stretcher. They go and check her in in the ambulance kind of shut the doors, and they fling open the door and say, "We got to go now." So her partner jumps in the back. They drive to Brigham and Women's Hospital, which is probably 3 miles from my house. She ended up delivering in the elevator on the way up the door. Again, another little girl. So these are the two babies, Delitso and Bowie, and both 7.1 pounds, both born within a week of each other, and what a stark difference these two births were. If you look at what the mother of Delitso had to go through to walk this whole way, didn't have prenatal care, didn't certainly get any help along the way from any kind of medical providers, as compared to Bowie's mother, who had had monthly, if not weekly, checkups throughout her entire pregnancy, had a gauntlet of medical tests to make sure that she and her baby were safe and healthy. If anything had gone wrong with Delitso's birth, we were the only vehicle for miles and miles and miles. If she had to have an emergency C-section, she would have died. There's no question, there's no way we could have gotten her to a facility. If we were not there that day, there would be no way that she would have had any chance at all. Bowie born, luckily, in a place, we had 5 hospitals, academic hospitals in Boston. You could throw a stone and hit a hospital that could have had special care nurseries. We literally were whisked into a room. We had 4 or 5 providers, specialty nurses. We had pediatricians all in the room. Literally 1 week apart, 2 totally different scenarios of these 2 little girls. If we look at maternal mortality in Malawi, maternal mortality is about 460 per 100,000. So 460 women will die giving birth of 100,000. In the US, it's about 21. Obviously a huge difference. Infant mortality in Malawi is 77 per 1,000. In the US, it's 5.9. Life expectancy for Bowie is 82. Life expectancy for Delitso is 52. Huge differences. 2 little girls born literally within the space of 6 days. HIV rates in the US are about 0.6. In Malawi, it's very high, about 10.8. This was although I've worked in global health for many years, this was a stark, in-my-face example of kind of the have and the have-nots in the world, and the differences by the sheer fact of where you were born and where what services or what chance you have in life. So where it began, this is me as a Brewer High School cheerleader, so this is not a picture that's ever escaped, and now I hear it's going to be on YouTube, so I'm excited about that. So I grew up in Brewer, Maine. My family moved there when I was about 4 or 5. My father was a professor at UMO. My mother was a social worker. I never thought I'd leave Brewer, Maine. Never wanted to leave Brewer, Maine. Grew up kind of the typical Maine life. We were always a little bit different in the sense of my parents were always very committed to and always talked about other people and the responsibility for other people. So we had the No Nukes t-shirt, we have the Save the Seals t-shirt, probably were much more socially aware than maybe some of my friends were. And it was definitely but never thought that I would kind of leave and do anything different than stay and grow up in Brewer, Maine. So then I went to Boston for nursing school. I started out at UMO and had to divert from there. And went to Northeastern, and while I was there, I worked it was about 1985, right when HIV was first starting in this country to be out there. I had the fortune very quickly of meeting a young man whose partner was dying of HIV at Brigham and Women's Hospital. That was the moon suit era. We didn't know definitively how HIV was passed. People were treated horrifically. People were treated as not human beings. Stigma was quite high. And I really, as a very young nursing student, saw how HIV is really affecting kind of society. What HIV did was illuminate the have and the have-nots in the world. Certainly in the US it did. Certainly looked at the links between poverty and illness. We know that HIV disproportionately affects people who are poor for a variety of reasons. We certainly looked at race and access to care. A lot of people who were in Boston who were part of the white gay male community had access to care, maybe not great care because of stigma, but if you were an African-American woman from Mattapan, you certainly didn't have the same access to care. Gender and power had a huge difference. HIV illuminated the differences there, and also kind of the impact stigma has on healthcare. I really, at that point, I think it ingrained in me as a nursing student that social justice was a huge piece of why I became a nurse, not even knowing that, and also a big piece of where I was going to practice in my life. So part of this, and I didn't know the name for it then, but now I know the name for it, that I see health as a human right, and I saw that with HIV, you, regardless of who you were, where you were born, what your sexual orientation was, what color you are, where you were from, that you had the right to have access to health. So that kind of brought my journey from Boston to DC, where I worked in the DC jail, worked in a variety of different places, all kind of within HIV, worked a little bit in the Navajo Nation, came back to Boston, got my master's degree, ended up working in South Africa for quite a bit. Again, because HIV was the thing that kind of brought me to different places, and I was able to kind of see many parts of the world that I never thought I would ever see, kind of growing up in a fairly sheltered community of where I was. The most interesting thing about all the things I do and all the places I've seen, and certainly this is a crowd who understands this, is kind of regardless of where you are, although there were stark differences between Bowie and Delitzo's entry into this world, you know, people are people. And those mothers both wanted their child to have the best that they could have. It was just definitely where they were born impacted that. And that's where all of us, regardless of where we are, have to take on this charge of health as a human right. About 4 years ago, I was very fortunate to join Partners in Health. And Partners in Health is an international non-governmental organization. Paul Farmer is the one that most people have heard of. Mountains Beyond Mountains is a book about Paul's life, and many people, that's how they come into global health. So we provide healthcare for about 3 million people in 10 countries. So I spend the majority of my time on the road in different countries, most of my time in Haiti, but also in Africa and some of our other sites. We've built and renovated over 70 health facilities in the 10 or 12 countries of where we are, depending on how you count. And that's been a huge piece of what we do, is trying to bring healthcare to where we are. Our model of accompaniment one is a little bit different in the sense of we don't go in and say, oh, we're here, we know better, we're going to build this facility for you. We very much partner with the people we are, and we do it together. So if anything, we lead from behind. I'm not an expert in Haiti, being a nurse in Haiti, being a nurse in Rwanda, Malawi. That isn't what I bring to it. I bring to the skills I have because I've been very fortunate to be born in a place where I've had access to excellent education. So I bring those skills. What my colleagues bring is their expertise in working and delivering care in really difficult, resource-limited settings. I learned a tremendous amount from Kalitzia, that midwife. I never could have done that. If I had to deliver that baby in the driveway, who knows what would have happened. It definitely is, this is certainly a shared a model. Our model is definitely one of shared knowledge, of bringing it together to get something done. The big thing also is we talk about our socialization for scarcity. And this is something that is, this happens all the time, that if you're born in Rwanda, you have breast cancer, you're going to die because there's no access to cancer care in Rwanda. If you are malnourished in Haiti and you're a child, you're probably going to die. That is really what we're fighting against, to say that is unacceptable. And whether you're sitting in Brewer, Maine, Boston, or wherever you are, that is something that we cannot say that that's okay. There's really not a difference from a woman being born in Rwanda, having breast cancer, to having it in Boston. So we're really pushing the envelope and treating cancer in Rwanda, building a hospital in Haiti so that we can have top-notch services, so that if you do have cancer in Haiti, we can have a CAT scan for you. It doesn't have to just be the people with money who get the services. So I think my kind of guiding principles of what brought me here, I think, is certainly something that comes up a lot, because people often say, and I do a lot of speaking around the country and around the world, and people will say, oh, did you always want to do global health? And I said, I never thought I'd leave Brewer, Maine. I certainly didn't think I'd be traveling to all these different countries. But what I did was I let kind of my passion and kind of where my commitment to health as a human right brought me to all these different places. Hopefully this will bring me back to Maine again someday. It's not certainly the venue of where we're doing it or the geographic location, it's the lens from which I practice. I'm a global nurse whether I'm at Mass General, or I'm a global nurse whether I'm in the Navajo Nation or wherever I am. I think letting your journey unfold is the important thing, and I know there's a lot of students here, and I would encourage you to let that happen and not just not direct the whole process, or you don't know where you'll end up. Local is global, and this is the perfect example of it here in the sense of this wonderful, rich, diverse community that is here in Portland, Maine, that is such a gift for everybody in Maine. Certainly as a Maine person who sees this as my home state, I'm so glad that Maine is becoming more diverse. Come back to your touchstone. I think mine, health is a human right, drives what I do, drives the decisions that I make when I'm in Lesotho, Malawi, et cetera, is I go back to that core of what is the important thing here. Should this person have access to the same care that I have? And then in solidarity, we talk a lot about solidarity at Partners in Health. And this is Paul Farmer, who's one of the co-founders, says, the idea that some lives matter less is the root of what's wrong in the world. And I truly think that's exactly what this is. And it's important that we all do see ourselves as one globe, do really welcome people into our community. It is all of our responsibility, and to really pay attention to not just over there, but pay attention to our own communities here, and really fight for what you think is important, fight for access, and fight for health as a human right. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sheila. Our next speaker, John Jenkins. He graduated from Bates College in 1976, which actually is the same year I graduated. John and I were classmates together. He was the only graduate who, when he came across the stage, had a standing ovation. It was just completely spontaneous. A well-loved man on campus. He later became Lewiston's mayor. He had a stint in the state legislature as a senator. He was written in as a write-in candidate to be mayor of the neighboring city, Auburn, and became mayor of Auburn. He is an author. Almost no one, I would guarantee in this room, knows that actually John's other talent was with me in Bates College. We developed a puppet show. We had the Uncle Obadiah puppet script, and we traveled around a little bit to schools, 1975 or so, giving we'd lug around our cardboard puppet theater, and John used that as a springboard for everything that followed later. So I'm really pleased to have John join us today. And John, there you are. Thank you very much.
I want to thank my brother, Dr. Chuck, and his phenomenal team, and all of you for making this day happen. So please, round of applause saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. We're not worthy, we're not worthy. And you need to know, Chuck, I'm still using that cardboard and I'm walking around. Yeah. It's good for council meetings, I'm telling you. People go, wow. Anyway. Maine-Africa Conference and connection, if you will. And if I can just ask a favor, if you can just turn this monitor around for me, this may be great, so I don't have to turn around. It's a phenomenal chance to have a great conversation with community members, because from my perspective, more than 30 some odd years of public service, I've seen a lot of things. I'm not originally from Maine. You may not have figured that out yet. I'm originally from the Free Republic of New Jersey, and I escaped. Anyway, so I'm an immigrant too. However, coming from Newark, which is a little further south than Portland, you get a chance to see a little bit of the world. and also of having had privilege of serving two great communities here in this great state. So without further ado, and I don't, there's a lot of material to cover in the time that we have, and there will be a chance to probably have some conversation later. But my theme is, can you say this with me? When things fall apart, we stand together. So that's the theme that I really wanted to drive home. This is not so much about necessarily doing a lot of research, but it's just merely asking us all to hold up a mirror. It's not rocket science. People feel, well, we got to study and do research, and we got to do, comparative analysis. And look in the mirror. It's as simple as the act of breathing. It's that natural that I'm asking us as community members to keep in mind when we're talking about United States of America. And if you take the United States and that U.S., put those two letters together, that spells the word hello. See, Bates College. So my theme here, this idea of things fall apart through the mind that accepts an us versus them conclusion. This helps to shred the social fabric we call community. The choice to stand together will reweave lives into this tapestry of community. Lives interwoven, much like a fine linen. Literally, our lives and our community hangs in the balance, linking one to another. I also want to mention this idea of community capital. Community assets are like fine linen, where the threads of our lives are intricately woven to the other, on whom our futures hang in balance, based on the strength of the social fabric we call community. We need each other, just like each thread interwoven in your favorite garment needs the other thread to literally hang on, to stay a part of, to belong. Isn't that what community is all about? That sense of belonging for all threads, not preferring one thread over another. So I ask us all, can everybody say Beatitudes? Beatitudes. I think it's appropriate at this point of place. But this is a kind of different Beatitudes, but we're talking about this idea of citizen and community involvement, because citizens want to be heard. Can you say this with me? Heard. Citizens want to be believed. Citizens want to be involved. They want to be respected. And of course they want to belong. Work with me, people, work with me. Everyone wants to belong, to be a part of, to be a part of. So here's my little saying for today, if you will. This is how things fall apart. This is how strife begins. When we become us and they become them. Lives link as one when we stand together as friends, and they become us, and we become them. Looking in the mirror, looking in the mirror. That's what this theme is all about, all of us taking that responsibility and making that choice to look in the mirror. Can I also share with you what Margaret Mead said? Never doubt that a small group of people and thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. It's the only thing that ever has. It just takes a few people. Don't take a large group and a big movement. A few people. Can everybody, now I know this is not correct, and any professors and English teachers out here and everyone else, can everybody say, that ain't right? That ain't right. Can everybody say, that's not fair? That's not fair. Thank you very much. Because once you get that out of your system of, that ain't right, that's not fair, at some point, you got to take your sense of being indignant and upset and get up and do something about it. But just to feel, that ain't right. Well, you'll see a lot of things that are not right, that are not fair. I'm saying, okay, I can't, in my own little memory, can't look back at a time where it was all just perfect. I don't know where there's ever been a time where it's just been nirvana, heaven. Pick your place, New Jersey. I don't know. Pick your favorite place. I'm not cracking on Jersey. I'm just sorry. Anybody from Jersey? But pick your place. In other words, the human condition is in part and parcel including struggle, personal struggle to succeed, personal demons we try to squelch. But then there's that social challenge that we have when cultures can have a choice to either blend and become a more enhanced sense of culture or become in conflict. That's a choice. It doesn't have to be that way. It's a choice. Anyway, don't get me started. I'm going to start preaching up here in a minute. So, this is an actual a recent report on a book written by a good friend of ours, Professor James Lehman from Bates College. He's a doctorate, of course, in history. And this is his book. It says, the title of the book is Historic Lewiston, a Textile City in Transition. So here's the word, here's the quote that's taken from the book. He's just gotten a recent review on. They came to Lewiston in search of jobs with the hope of a better future. To many of Lewiston's Yankee inhabitants, the presence of blank represented a real threat to their social and cultural traditions. The book goes on, the statement goes on. This is actually pulled from his research. The blank refugees were poor and often needed public welfare. This was a new problem to Lewiston. Never before had so many people needed assistance. The poor blank refugees did not have money for housing. The blank brought with them a different religion and strange customs. So my question to you are, can you name the group in question? French, Irish, Somali, Bantu, Togo. We can go on and on and on. Lithuanian, I don't know. So, some of you are right on the ball on that one. They came to Lewiston in search of jobs with the hope of a better future. To many of Lewiston's Yankee inhabitants, the presence of the Irish. And of course, there's Irish throughout that little statement. So my point is this. This cycle, and unfortunately it is a cycle, that gets repeated. You just need only insert the new group. It's not a new thing. So what is being said in today's news, oh, those people, they come here with their customs, their language, their culture. Man, I gotta say, I don't know if any of you been to major metropolitan areas other than LA. Well, that's what we call ourselves in Lewiston, Auburn. It sounds impressive, but you know. Hey, back off, people. Chuck, you got a rough crowd in here, man. But anyway, but you go to, they literally take pride as a community and say, this is Little Italy, Chinatown. And in fact, they actually use those are tourist destinations, people. They embrace the enormity of who we all are because they understand this is a good thing. And it's a good thing. As opposed to it's something and someone to be feared and rejected, that other. I'm just asking us all not to keep looking at fault and who's doing what and who's not doing what and not living up to expectations, because you all hopefully are taking that initiative to vote, to speak your word, but also to truly put in place people who will walk their word, honor their commitment, understand that it takes all threads woven together to truly weave the social fabric we call community. So it's not about looking at somebody else and say, oh, they should have, would have, the right thing would have been. Well, we can all sit and point fingers and see fault. But I got to say to you all in this room today, I don't think any of you can see your own eyelashes. Just saying, something so close to your field of vision you cannot see. Don't get me started. One of my little karate instructors taught me that a long time ago, but that's another story. Anyway, back in 1915, you will see the theme Nina, or some would say Nina. No Irish need apply. That was plastered on store windows in Boston. When things fall apart, we stand together. It's hard to imagine Boston now without that Irish influence as part of the culture. Things come, we stand together. In the 20s, Maine, of all places, had the largest membership of the Klan. Now you may say, well, wait, there wasn't that many black people up here. You're right. But who was? Franco-Americans, my friends. Catholics, that different religion, that different language. Oh yeah. Had their priests tarred and feathered. Oh yeah. The way life should be. When things fall apart, we stand together. And isn't it interesting how you can't imagine Maine without the influence of the Franco-American culture? Hard to imagine it, because we learn how to stand together. Back in my little humble beginning in Newark, New Jersey, they had the riots. Things fell apart. Seeing people get gunned down in the streets, tanks. I mean, this was war. Terrible stuff. Lack of a lot of things going wrong, but there was a lack of representation as well. But it's hard to imagine Newark without having representation on the council and in the schools these days. We learn to stand together. And then now you have here in Lewiston, and of course in Auburn as well, I had a chance to serve as their chief elected official, having had the experience back in the day when we used to run for Bates college, when people would drive by, and we were track athletes back in the day, you go running through the neighborhoods, get in shape and everything else. It was not unusual to have certain words yelled out of car windows going by, or have bottles thrown at you, literally at me. Made me feel I'm not welcome here. See, those folks saw different. But I gotta say, things fell apart. Wasn't how funny when people say, well, leadership is irrelevant in terms of how you look. It's what you're going to do. Those same, not all, but some of those same people who said those words, tossed those bottles, were saying what's working for me years later. What changed? This didn't. Just saying. You learn how to stand together. And of course, a couple of mayors after me, there was a letter written. And let's not go there. Anyway, things fell apart big time. And the letter was directed to a certain part of our community. And for those who don't know, the mayor said, to folks who immigrants, basically that's what this conference is all about, saying, tell your family and friends don't come here. Our pockets are limited and we're done. Tell them don't come here. Go someplace else. Well, that got real big, real fast. Anyway, big problems came from that. But then there's a Many in One coalition where we learned how to stand together, to stand in opposition to that theme. And then in 2004, I became written in as the mayor of Auburn, as was stated. And then Portland and Lewiston has their first representatives who serve in municipal government, and on both, actually, school committees as well. So I'm saying we learn how to stand together. This is a theme. We have a balloon festival up there, and I thought this was appropriate as well. This idea of teamwork, T-E-A-M, together each action matters when you're a team. Together everyone achieves more when you're a team. Together each attitude matters when you're a team. So this idea of a balloon, it takes all holding to the other and working together for all to rise. Isn't that what a community is all about? This is how things fall apart. This is how strife begins, when we become us and they become them. Lives link as one when we stand together as friends, and they become us and we become them. I'm an amateur photographer as well. And this idea of each new day provides an opportunity for us to help our community be better than yesterday. Not better than Boston, not better than... Can we as a people, be better than we were yesterday? Our better selves. That's what I'm asking us to consider. Become our better selves. Not compared to someone else, but can we be a better self than we were yesterday? Well, I've just kind of outlined how that happens when people wake up and learn to stand together. And at this point in time, I'd like you just to, shake 3 people's hands right now saying, we stand together. Please, shake 3 people's hands saying, we stand together. Okay, hang on. I got a few more seconds here. Now you get back off, man. You're like, yeah, I'm going to take your microphone, man. So one more thing here, one more thing. At this point in time, can I have you all stand up for a second, please, real quick? Real quick. Now, so if you have someone next, just kind of lace each other, interlace each other's arm, so your left and your right. Okay. Oh, that's very good. And if you want to go through their pockets, you can, but that's on you. That's next week's seminar. Anyway, I'm just messing with you. Anyway, so can you all say this with me together as we're here and your arms are interlaced? Can you all just gently open the hands like so? When things fall apart, bring the fingers together. So you got to get closer to each other. And look to the left and the right and say, we stand together. Give yourselves a hand, folks. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much, John. Pleasure to hear you talk again.
Thank you. Great job.
Our next speaker, Dr. Hector Terraza, exemplifies the Lucille Ball quote. And of course, most people remember Lucille Ball as a comedian, but she actually had a very thoughtful quote that when you go looking for quotes, I think applies to Dr. Terraza. If you want something done, ask a busy person to do it, and the corollary is the more things you do, the more you can do. And I think it's very likely most of the people in this room, by just finding the time to attend a conference like this, I think for the most part, John is preaching to the converted. We're all on board on so many of the messages that he have. But Dr. Terraza has put this into practice writ large. For the past 20 years, he has led medical teams to South America, Asia, and Africa. He currently is the volunteer medical director at Partners for World Health here in Portland. And let's have a nice round of applause for Dr. Terraza.
Thank you, everybody, and I really want to thank the program committee and everyone for coming out here today to allow me to speak about what I desperately call my passion. This is really my passion, and as Dr. Chuck mentioned, I've been doing this for approximately 20 years. We've been conducting a lot of medical missions throughout Asia, Africa, and South America. And in Africa specifically, we've been bringing volunteers of doctors and nurses to Senegal, to Ethiopia, and to Sierra Leone. And today, what I'd like to do is I'd like you to come with me and spend a day with me. What's it like to be a volunteer surgeon in these countries, okay? So we're going to start by traveling, and as you can see, we don't travel lightly. Each one of us carries about 200 pounds worth of supplies because we never know what we're going to need. There's going to be all kinds of different types of surgeries, all kinds of different types of medical problems, unclear as to what we're going to be up against. And so we literally need to bring everything because the many places that we go, they don't have anything. And so we leave the comforts of Maine and we travel across to Europe or to the Middle East because unlike other places, it's hard to get there from here. It oftentimes takes about 17 hours to fly to some of these places. And when we arrive, the journey isn't over. We get to the airport, and this is, for example, in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia after 17 hours of flying, and we pack all our luggage and suitcases into these vans, and oftentimes we travel for about another 5, 6, 7 hours to some of the so-called remote hospitals and places that have been forgotten throughout the world. Along the way, this is what we see. We see people living in very desperate situations. This is a mother over here, 15 years old, and that's her baby. And this is a grandmother who's 30 years old. And these women will never really stand a very firm chance in life. They haven't been given a fair shake. We oftentimes see this. There's no potable water. Many of these people wash their clothes in the same streams that animals come and defecate. And oftentimes, it really makes their lives really terrible. These are the cities in Freetown, Sierra Leone, where we oftentimes travel to, and you can see the crowdedness of it, and the habitations that many of these people live in, surviving on literally $1 a day. It's amazing to think, $1 a day. I urge you to try doing that for a couple of weeks. Try surviving on $1 a day. See what that feels like. Go grocery shopping. Do everything you're supposed to do on $1 a day. See what happens. It's very, very difficult. And when we arrive, after traveling for 17 hours flying and 7 hours on the bus, we need to set up and get everything ready because the next day we're going to be getting to work to see patients and operate. So in the evening upon arrival, we set up all our materials, and as you can see, we carry everything from portable anesthesia machines, all our sutures, all our medications over here, and we prepare everything. And then by 8, 9 o'clock at night, tired, we need to go to bed because we're going to have a busy day. But oh, by the way, at around 11 o'clock, somebody knocks on our door and says, "Is there an obstetrician surgeon around here?" And of course, that's me. And I said, yes. And he says, "Well, we could use your help." So I immediately get dressed at about 11 o'clock at night and head into the operating theater. And in the operating theater, there are these 2 family doctors that are operating. And what they're doing is they're trying to do a cesarean section. But the problem is they can't get this baby out. And the reason they can't get this baby out is because this mother was at home trying to deliver 3 hours away from this hospital, and she spent 8 hours trying to push this baby out and couldn't. And so now this child is really stuck. And so what ends up happening is they tried to do the cesarean and they couldn't get this baby out. We finally were able to get this baby out, but unfortunately, as you can see in this picture here, she had torn her uterus, she had torn her vagina, she had torn her bladder, she had totally torn her rectum and everything. And so for the next 5.5 hours, I had to reconstruct that entire area. I had to do a hysterectomy on her, I had to do a colostomy, I had to reimplant her ureter. It's 5.5, 6 hours worth of surgery that we performed. I asked these 2 doctors, "So what would you have done had I not been here?" And they said, "She would have died. They would have decapitated the baby, from that point, and she would have just died." I'm happy to say that this is her and her baby. She's doing well. 6 months later, I came back and I closed her colostomy because I had to do a temporary colostomy on her, and she did well. So by now it's 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm tired. I quickly go back to sleep for about an hour, hour and a half, and then in the morning wake up and I can actually see now what's going on here. This is the hospital that we're working in Yirgalem in Ethiopia. This is a hospital that serves approximately 1.5 million people. 1.5 million people. That's the entire population of the state of Maine. It's even more. And this is the hospital that they're in. So I went back into the operating theater that I had been working on because I didn't really get a good view. And this is the operating theater that they have. And if you look carefully at the operating room table, you can clearly see it's rusted, corroded. I lifted up the pad and you can see this thing was built in 1947. Completely corroded. And that's what they take care of people on. And that's the facility that they have. And I can tell you it doesn't get better because, for example, they had another, in the other room, they had what they called a new operating table, and this is what they had. This isn't even an operating table. This is an exam table. When you go see your doctor, this is what they have. Here I am doing a cesarean section on this woman on just a plain old exam table. That's what they have. So we started our rounds first thing in the morning, and here we are. We work together with the doctors and nurses, and just like Dr. Davis mentioned, we immerse ourselves with them. This isn't our program. This is their program. We immerse ourselves with them. We work together with them. We're a part of their healthcare community, and we're rounding and seeing patients. And it's sad to say that in a lot of these places where we go, there are hundreds upon hundreds of patients. This hospital has 250 beds, and there was 350 patients that day. There are patients literally laying on the floor with no beds, no mattresses or anything. I mean, it's just unbelievable to think that that's how people have to survive. You look at the supplies. This hospital for 1.2 million people literally has nothing on their shelves. This is the hospital supply room. This is the operating room supplies. You can clearly see they have just a small amount of sutures, a few packs for instruments, a few supplies. That's all they have. This is their fetone. This is what they listen to, the heart rate for babies. That's all they have. While we're taking our little quick tour, they're having trouble in the operating room. A woman arrived and she ruptured her uterus, and as you can see, things aren't going too well. They don't have, oh, I forgot to I apologize. Some of these may be graphic. I'm sorry about that. I always forget. I get so passionate about this that I forget to warn people about this. But they don't have a blood bank or anything. And so I immediately started to work. And as you can see, I scrubbed in on this case. But notice how I'm scrubbing in. Their water from the faucet is so polluted that they don't even use it. They take a bucket of water that they have here that they've boiled, and they use that so that I can scrub in on the case. And I joined him. And as I'm joining him, I'm finding out that this is a 20-year-old woman, young, first baby, and the baby has died because it ruptured inside her. And now what we're trying to do is we're trying to save her uterus here. We're trying to save her uterus because of the fact that if we do a hysterectomy, she's never going to be able to have children. And that's really going to be a real major taboo in her life. Children are very important to these women, very important to their families, very important to their lives. And so we need to make an effort to try to help them. And so we were able to. Again, 3 to 4 hours worth of surgery. Meanwhile, in the other room, they've asked us to come and see this young boy. He's a 14-year-old. He has what we call an osteogenic sarcoma. It's a horrific cancer, horrific tumor. We clearly know it has already metastasized, but his quality of life is so miserable because he can't even stand on this. So what we ended up doing was an amputation. This young boy died 6 months later, I come to find out. But at least his quality of life was so much better without this leg, which was causing him so much pain and discomfort. We at least palliated and provided some comfort in his last days of life. Our next patient is this young lady. She's 18 years old, and she's got a goiter. It's a huge, huge goiter. She's 18 years old. If you look at it from the side view, you can clearly see that this isn't normal. So we proceed to operate on her. You can see us over here operating to take this out. Take this out. And it took us about 3 hours to remove it because it's so big and so vascular. And we realized that we're working without any blood bank, without an intensive care unit, without subspecialists to help us, intensive medicine. But we were able to successfully remove this, and now she lives a healthy, normal life. We provide her with thyroid medication, and she's going to do incredibly well, incredibly well. And as the day goes on, more and more patients keep arriving. This is a patient I'm bringing into the operating theater who had this horrific tumor called a borderline tumor that she had been suffering on for quite some time. And the treatment for this, interestingly enough, is just to remove it. But she didn't have the money or the resources or the ability to remove it. And we were able to safely remove this tumor, and she's gone on to do incredibly well, incredibly well. Some of these tumors get enormous. This is another woman who came in at age 40 with this enormous tumor. And every time she had a menstrual period, she almost hemorrhaged to death, literally almost hemorrhaged to death, because she had these enormous fibroid tumors. This one weighed almost 100 pounds. That's how big it was. And we were able to safely remove it and take it out. And she no longer has periods, and now she can lead a normal, healthy life. Everywhere we go, wherever we're at, we are constantly with lots and lots of doctors and nurses with us who have the hunger to learn, the ability to learn. This is in Ethiopia, and here I'm operating. This is 1, 2, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 surgeons who are with me learning a new technique that I was trying to teach them. These women with these prolapses, we're trying to put it all back inside them. It's an operation called an abdominal colposacropexy, and so we were teaching them how to do it. And the fun part is, you teach them how to do it, and then you let them do it, and you observe them, and they do a great job because they're wonderful technicians, they're great surgeons and everything, but they don't have the resources or the capability, unfortunately. And that's the sad part about what's happening with a lot of these people. And the lines are long. Once they find out you're there, goodness gracious, this is my patient line. There's just, in the first day there's 10 or 15, and the next day there's 50 to 60, and by the end of the 2 or 3 weeks that we're there, there's hundreds of people just waiting outside to be evaluated. To see if we can operate on them, if we can take care of them, if we can help them with their ailment. Some of them we can, many of them we can't. But we try to make every effort to help those that we possibly can with the resources that we come with. As the days go by, as that same day goes on, more emergencies keep coming. It's just a never-ending stream of emergencies. Here they're wheeling in this one woman who came in with a ruptured uterus, and also the placenta here has completely avulsed. She has an abruption going on, and we're trying to resuscitate her child. And we were fortunate. She was very, very lucky. She was able to. And we were able to, give her child back to her because we had the opportunity to help, save her child. Sometimes we're able to do that. Sometimes we're not able to do that. This is a gentleman who came in with obstructions. Many of these people have a lot of intestinal parasites, and they're constantly being obstructed. And so here we are operating on a young man who's came in with the belly completely distended. And we ended up having to operate and take out a good portion of his colon. And he did quite well. And you're taking out this colon, and I unfortunately didn't show you this picture, but there's all these worms and everything coming out of his intestines because it was completely filled with parasites. Very sad, very, very sad. Towards the end of the day, we start taking care of those who have been taken care of. This is a woman who had had a previous surgery approximately 2 months ago, but she developed a large wound infection, and it all opened up. And so it required more surgery to clean it up, to breed it, and do dressing changes on it. And this is not an uncommon thing. Oftentimes, with the sterility that they have in a lot of these places, up to 30 to 40% of these people can get severe infections, both internal as well as external infections, wound infections and everything. So there's a tremendous amount of energy being spent, even on those that have been operated on, to try and take care of a lot of these infections that are going on. It's getting very late in the day. You probably have done, on an average, 6, 7, 8 cases. You're tired, but you maintain that tranquility knowing that, you have a talent that you've been given, you've been blessed with, and you want to share it. You want to share it with all around you. You want to do everything you possibly can during that short period of time. In addition to all the surgeries, we're constantly helping them with other things. Like, for example, these suction machines that they get, a lot of equipment that arrives from throughout the world, a lot of that stuff doesn't work. It's poorly managed. It doesn't come with parts or manuals or anything. So we constantly are helping them to try and get these things to work for them. We're sitting there teaching young doctors in the emergency department, how to sew lacerations. This is a gentleman who came in with some significant lacerations. And this young doctor, she's learning how to operate to close these incisions and help these types of patients. We spend time talking with the surgeons there about the equipment that they have. This is what we call a major laparotomy tray. And in it, there are 8, 9 pieces of instruments that they have to do major abdominal surgery. 8 or 9. The minimum that I carry in my trays is 40 pieces of instruments. So you can imagine what a struggle it must be like to try to do literally a yeoman's miracle work with such a small amount of instruments. You look at their processes. They have these beautiful washing machines, but they don't work. Or if they work, they don't have the money to run them. So all of the laundry, the hospital laundry, is all done by hand. It's all done by these women who, day in and day out, try and do the best they can. These are lap sponges. These are sponges that we normally throw away, and yet here they are. They're using them. They're using them again and again and again. These are some of the drapes that they use. Goodness gracious, could you imagine trying to do surgery with a drape like this? It's just unheard of. It's absolutely unheard of. At the end of the day, it's now 8 o'clock and we do our final rounds and spend some time with our patients who we've operated on and see those that we're going to operate on the next day. It's been a long day. You know, I've gotten only about 2 hours worth of sleep, not including all the travel time and everything that we did, plus the work we did at night, the work we did throughout the day, and we have a full day tomorrow. The last thing we do is we go into these wards called the nutrition wards. And this is incredibly sad. This is incredibly sad. In these nutrition wards, you find little children like this. This is a 3-year-old who was abandoned, and this gentleman found him in the trash. It's incredibly sad to see this. This child will never be the same. Developmentally, he's totally delayed. He will never be a healthy child. And yet, they're working very hard to try to keep him alive. I leave you with this last picture. This picture has become my mantra. It has truly become my mantra. This is a homeless woman. She's nameless, she's faceless, and she's voiceless. But she's my patient. She's my patient, she's my responsibility. She's also your responsibility, too. We as a community, we as a society, we as a planet owe it to her to give her a better life, to give her an opportunity, to give her a chance. I'm committed to do it. I'm committed every day of my life as a surgeon, as a doctor, and as a human to do that. And so I ask each and every one of you to commit yourselves to be a better person, to give her hope, to give her an opportunity, because she's nameless, she's faceless, and she's voiceless. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Terraza. It is a small world we live in, and not only are our connections getting closer and closer within the streets or the towns or the cities we live in, but also there's so many connections overseas and so many groups doing work overseas. Our next speaker, Dr. Kalawale Bankole, he's a senior medical officer, originally from Nigeria. He also wears many hats. I think for a fuller description of his many hats he wears, if you want to go online and look on our speakers list, he has a really wonderful, extensive biography. Currently, he works for the City of Portland. He's director of the Minority Health Program with a special interest in access to health care for vulnerable populations. We're pleased to have Dr. Bankole speak with us today. Thank you, Dr. Bankole.
You're welcome. Good afternoon. I was just checking in and, So, if you're not touched by what you've just seen, had Dr. Teresa talk, well, I'm touched. I'm even thinking of, should I even be presenting again? Because that shows the reality of what we face in our different world. And it even brought out the emotion from me, practicing as an OBGYN specialist, when you see very tough cases, impacted bladder, uterus already ruptured, or you even have presenting hands and legs. So difficult to practice within that environment. But anyway, look around, turn around, look around and see who is here today. Normally, when you're presenting to the students, you only see just the white Caucasian. You don't see the varieties. But here today, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story to tell. Any of us can come over here and tell their story. It's just that we're privileged to be here today to tell you about our story, how important it is. but for you also to take a leave from it, to see that, things are happening, and for us to be here today makes a difference. So, I will be talking a lot about, cultural awareness, and at the same time, how do we link that to elimination of health disparities? I'm going to tell you my story too. My story is not going to be too long, but I wanted to borrow a leaf from my own story and see how that represents, majority of people and how you can relate to that particular story. Vis-a-vis in whatever you're doing, in whatever calling that you have been made to present yourself, you'll be able to think twice and see people have come from different environments. People have come from different backgrounds, and they are here today. There are some prescriptions that you got to take in order for you to be able to do well in whatever you're doing. And just as I've said, I'm going to be telling you my story, and at the same time, thinking through the paradigm shift. And I know my friend earlier on already talked about, the increase in migration, the guy from Talan Amado from Catholic Charities. So he may have already talked to you about migration. I'm not going to talk too much about that. But really, I wanted to dive deep into cultural competence, cultural humility, and all doctors, if you go to see doctors, you got to get a prescription. Don't you get a prescription? So I will leave you with a prescription. And if there's anything you got to leave from my own presentation, make sure you get a prescription from me today. All right? And essentially, in many of my presentations, I try to raise the awareness for people. You got to know there are different cultures, there are different races, there are different perspectives, there's different expectations. And what do we do to mitigate the disparities that might be present? Disparities in healthcare services, access to those services, disparities in the cost, disparities in the way we ourselves as service providers provide those services. So we're going to touch a little bit about that. And of course, at the end, you'll hear me talking about the prescription. Don't leave my consulting room without getting the prescription, all right? Right, that just tell you about the details. So who am I? When I was writing these PowerPoints, I was like, how do I actually present myself? It's like I'm an open book. Everybody knows me. So what else am I going to say? Everybody knows I'm from Nigeria. But how many people know when I came to the United States? I said, Pius knows. Well, some other people knows. But for the group, I came in 2 weeks before 9/11. So you can imagine. I came in, there was no stress. But 2 weeks later, I said, what is happening in America? Come on. Everybody's running up and down. Oh, we're at war. I said, okay, well, am I safe? And that same week, the following day, I was pulled over by the police. Wow. All right, before the police thing, let me tell you, the first day in New York, what happened? Follow the trend, and there's a reason why I'm going to tell you that. I came down at JFK, and I was really hard-pressed. I need to go to the bathroom, so I can use the word bathroom right now. But then, I was like, I need to go to the gents. So I went to see the cop that was standing there. I said, you know what? I look around. There's no gents around here. I need to go to the gents. The guy looked at me. You need to go to the gents? Oh, yeah, I need to go to the gents. I said, you should understand. He looked so puzzled. Well, anyway, he said, okay, I need to go to the toilet. I said, oh, toilet, go there. So I went to the place. It was labeled bathroom. I'm not going to take my bath. I'm not going to the bathroom. No way, I'm not going in there. All right, I came back. I said, you know what? I said, I need to go to the toilet, not bathroom. Oh, okay, go to that place. So I went to the other place. What did I find? Restroom. Oh, gee, no way, I'm not going to the restroom. Back home, if you're on an emergency call, you have the doctor's restroom. We rest there. You get the pager, they page you. You go and do whatever you want to do. So maybe the pilots are already having rest in the restroom. So why should I go to the restroom? So I came back to the guy and said, you know what? I want to go to the toilet. I'm not going to the restroom. The guy was like, what's wrong with this guy? First day in America. I didn't know where to go. Then he looked around because he was standing at attention. Then he said, okay, follow me. Then he stood in front of the restroom. He said, go inside. I said, no, I'm not going inside. Because people are resting there, I don't want to disturb them. I said, go inside. I said, anyway, who is going to arrest me? It's not the police guy. Okay, you said I should go inside. Okay, fine. Then I opened the door. Wow. Till today, I still keep thinking, why do Americans call toilet restroom? Nobody rests in the restroom. Oh, no. Anyway, that was one piece. Then I got done. So I put that in my head. Then the next, I said, I'm going to Portland. I got to the lady, the receptionist. I said, I want to go to Portland. So, oh, fine, you can go by air, you can go by land, you can go by anywhere. I said, okay, I'm done with flying. I want to go by land. So she started calling. Oh, there's a gentleman here that wants to go to Oregon. Then I look at my visa. I said, you know what? I'm not going to. Ma, please, what I have is Portland, Maine. Is it the same thing as Portland, Oregon? Then she looked at, nobody goes to Maine. I said, oh, what do you mean? Nobody goes to Maine? Oh, but I'm going to Portland, Maine. Nobody goes to Maine. I said, okay, fine, good. Well, I started getting scared going to Maine. Anyway, cut the story short, I came over. Then 2 weeks later, 9/11. And then the police guy started tracking me. And you know the funny thing? Back home, when the police stops you, you come out of your car, you show your hands, but I was coming out, the guy was shouting, get into the car. I wasn't understanding what he was saying. Was this guy speaking English or what? Okay, fine. Somebody across said, stay in your car. Why all these changes? Police protocol says, come out, show your hands. Then, before I knew it, 2, 3 cars, cops' car came around. I'm not a criminal, I'm a doctor. Come on, what is going on in this country? All right, fine. Then after a while, the guy came and said, oh, I'm so sorry, you know what has happened? Then I started running my mouth. Do you know who you are talking to? I'm from Nigeria, and I've not done anything. Look at, how could you maltreat a doctor in this country? Well, I got to talk, because he apologized. He said he was sorry. But anyway, so needless to say that every one of us got a story. There is a cultural shock. Even when I was thinking I was speaking English, my orientation, everything was all British-based. And coming to America, that was a big shift. There's so many stories, so many things. The first month, second month, things were a little tough because there were some adjectives I was using that were not appropriate in America. I was dropping some of those, and I was picking some of the ones. Maybe I was picking the bad ones, I don't know. But things were a little edgy. Now think of people that didn't have their background in English. No linguistic, English language was a big deal. And coupled with all the experience that I faced, it's like double jeopardy. So I'm not going to touch about all the stuff because you probably know all the facts. Things are changing. The demographic picture in America is changing. So also more people are coming. And I always put this slide in at every time when I do my presentation. Nobody wants to leave their own homeland, but circumstances prevent them from staying. And the greatest sorrow that anybody could have is the loss of their native land. You don't want to go, imagine like the Teresa was saying, live on $1 a day. Or I would say, I take you, I dump you in the jungle of Africa. See what you're going to do. I was presenting at boarding college one time. They were saying, one student said, but of course, if you're in the jungle, make a call. Call 911. You call 911 in Nigeria, you're not going to get nothing. All right. You've probably already gone through that. And this notion that, well, you're now in America, everything should be all fine. You don't have any stress. I tell you, the life of an immigrant, the life of a refugee is a life of continual stress because you're in a new environment. Before a refugee comes over, the stress of migration, ethnic vendetta, religious cleansing, people killing themselves. During migration, they are faced with a lot of elements. You've heard of the Lost Boys of Sudan. People died during that process. So a refugee that you are seeing today is an embodiment of the highest level of human resiliency. They are survivors. If you know the detailed components of being a survivor, that is what it means. And now they're in America. Wow, another set of stress comes on. You got to learn English, my friend. You got to pay bills, my friend. You got to look for work, my friend. Oh, you cannot, transition your experiences directly. You got to go through the deliberations. It's a constant, continual, life stressor for refugees and immigrants. So why do we have to think deeply about culture and cultural influences? Well, just like from my little story, and I'm sure you've heard so many stories, and people come with, they are just the embodiment of everything that makes them who they are. What you're seeing, how they talk, how they speak, their interactions, their expectations, all those are all influenced by their background, genetics, and a lot of factors. So they might not be like you. They might not talk like you. They might not think like you. They might not react like you. So what does that mean? We need to understand their culture. We need to know how they do things. And that is why they talk around. I'm sure you guys have already heard about cultural competence. But there's a new sheriff in town, cultural humility. My time is really running, but I'll be touching on them little by little. There are so many definitions of culture. Well, some anthropologists will give you some scientific, detailed meaning of culture. So I put some definitions here. But the simple form is just say, culture is a way of life. And it's very dynamic. The way you live your life is your culture. I've heard people tell me during presentation, during questions saying, but Americans don't have a culture. I said, what do you mean by that? They have the pop culture? So yeah, pop culture for those who rap. I said, no. Well, any group of people in America, the way they do their stuff. Do they do the OPP? Well, that's the culture. Whatever. Culture is the way of life of people. Your way of life, my way of life, they are my culture, your culture. So, and what you see is just periphery. You see that line. Try and learn more about this. The iceberg concept of culture. Whatever you're seeing is on the surface. But deep-seated, there's so many things. Now you see me, I'm black. But if I tell you I'm white, will you disagree? You will disagree. Only pious will disagree. But I'm self-identifying myself. So, on the surface, you're saying that. But deep-seated, you don't know what my innate belief is. You don't know what is driving my emotion, what is driving my decision-making process. That deeply seated, culture is what you got to understand. Don't take me or stereotype me based on what you're saying. Based on my character. Base your interaction with me on what you're seeing me put out to you. So, talking about cultural competence. So knowing that people come from different countries, knowing that people come with different expectations, different cultural innuendos, embodiments, background, then also knowing that in America there's been a lot of historical notations around segregation, cultural disparities. The federal government felt, everybody pays tax, So why not? Make sure any organization that collects federal funding, make sure they do not discriminate based on anything, based on racial, race, country, you know, that long list, gender, age, and whatever. And it all started with the president. I love this quote. Simply justice requires that public funds to which all taxpayers of all races, colors, and national origins contribute not to be spent in any fashion which encourages, entrenches, subsidizes, or results in racial, color, or national origin discrimination. Then, from there, a lot of the laws, rules, policies that came about, or that you must provide language interpreting services. You must make sure that everyone get equal access to services. Anyhow you're going to do it. It's all based on cultural competence, rules, mandates, laws. But you could do that without even having a human connection. But with cultural humility, you want to commit yourself to understanding the other person. You want to commit yourself to having partnership. You want to commit yourself to building your flexibility to serve this person in a better way. You see, there are two differences. I'm following rules and regulations to make sure that I provide the service. Oh no, I'm doing a better job, humanly possible, within my own self, respecting my own culture, and at the same time, going forward to meet the needs of this other person and providing services. So, what is my prescription today? Because I've been told my time is up. In health equity, health disparity versus health equity, when you now find out there is a particular group or set of community having disparate, problems or barriers or challenges in having access to care, then you start thinking of how best to really implement services to improve access to your care. I came up with this prescription, but I didn't come up with the content. I'll tell you, how many of us have heard about the platinum rule? Platinum rule. Donna, don't raise up your hand. Okay, fine. Platinum rule says you treat others as they want to be treated, which is totally different from the golden rule. The golden rule says what? I'm not hearing that more well. Golden rule says treat others as you want to be treated. But the way you want to be treated may not fit into the way I want to be treated, right? I was telling people, I get called by my last name. But in this environment, people get called by their first name. If you're practicing golden rule, that's fine. But if you're practicing platinum rule, you are treating people the way they want to be treated. You are meeting them at their point of need. Platinum rule. The second prescription, or the line item on your prescription, is the 3 A's principles. 3 ask. If you're in doubt, ask. Ask again for clarification. Ask again for confirmation. By the time you do the 3, well, you're going to get it. So, platinum rule, 3 asks, and what? The last one, be humble and practice cultural humility. So the takeaway again, please. Practice platinum rule. Treat others as they want to be treated. 3 A's, ask. Then ask to confirm what you just heard from the person, and ask to make sure that both of you are on the same page. And be humble enough to practice cultural competence. So, and I want all of us to read this together. On the count of 3, put your name in there. It's a pledge. 1, 2, 3. As a cultural competent, you. Go on. I am capable of doing what? Interactively. Yeah. Who do not, like me, talk like me, think like me, believe like me, act like me, live like me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Bankole. Our next speaker, Fatuma Hussein, came to Atlanta, Georgia at age 12 from Somalia. She's since relocated to Auburn, where she founded the United Somali Women of Maine in 2002. And this is what I've seen in so much in recent years, that it doesn't take long for our immigrant communities to form their own organizations. And so often, they're not only supporting the work that's being done in their own communities, but they're reaching out overseas to try to help back in their countries of origin. Not long, as John Jenkins told us, if we think back really to that time in 2002, then Mayor Laurier Raymond, he did write that infamous letter, that open letter, that was addressed to leaders of the Somalian community. He predicted a negative impact on the city's social services and requested that further Somalian immigration be discouraged. From that, there was really a wonderful, almost total outpouring of support in 2002. There were about 4,000 people who marched in Lewiston during that response week, and a kind of a sad, relatively impotent group of about 30 Aryan supporters, were kind of camped out at one of the exits in the Lewiston-Auburn area. So I think it was something that Maine in general has something to be proud about, that reaction was really supported in a very positive way to turn that initial negative thought out. Here we are 13, 14 years later. I go back to Lewiston not infrequently. Lisbon Street has always been an area that's had trouble economically, but you can see many African businesses opening up on Lisbon Street. And Fatuma is nice enough to come and speak with us about her experiences. I present to you Fatuma Hussein.
Thank you. I have the timer there too. Thanks. We'll start with a video, and then I'll speak. It's about a 5-minute video.
Many of us refugees and immigrants fled our national countries in search of peace, safety, and new lives. As third world country citizens, many of us have been exposed to, for most of our lives, war, poverty, gender-based violence, including sexual violence, amongst other injustices. These groups of courageous men and women and children have left everything they've ever known in hopes of providing a new life and better opportunities for their families. With aspiration for a new life, the refugee and immigrant population embraced Maine as our new home, and we sought to assimilate as best as possible to our new culture with pride and integrity while protecting our own unique cultures, stories, and lives. Starting over became the biggest challenge facing us refugees and immigrants. Rebuilding our lives one day at a time, a new wave of hope sprung through the streets of Lewiston, Auburn, and Portland, Maine. Little shops offering glimpses of lives and stories far away from Maine began to pop up seemingly everywhere. We introduced ourselves the best way we knew how, offering traditional foods, rich culture that includes wearing very bright clothes despite Halloween season, and even during the cold, snowy Maine weather. Maine has been changing for many years. Lewiston, Auburn has begun seeing its change 12 years ago. With this new population, there needs to be patience, education, awareness, welcoming, and opportunities embracing diversity. Over the years, we've witnessed our communities grow together. Our children have had the opportunity to receive fair education and pursue higher learning. Countless youth have attended our colleges right here in Maine, and even more go outside the New England region to receive degrees and accolades that their parents couldn't even dream of. Our children are our future and the leaders of tomorrow. Maine has changed to become a thriving multicultural state with a very bright future. Together, we can build our state and create thriving, healthy, and safe communities for all.
Thank you. That was a short video that we had put together, believe it or not, in one day. We had our annual meeting coming up back in November. My name is Fatuma Hussein. I am from Somalia, and I have 6 children, pregnant with the 7th. So ranging from 19 to a newborn baby. So when I'm told, but you're Americanized, you're in America, you should be behaving like American women. I'm like, you know what, my culture is me. This is my culture, so this is what I know. I'm very proud to be Somali, and our program works with refugee women and children. We're the only refugee women center in the state that's based out of Lewiston. We do have an office in Portland, in Riverton. Pius talked about Riverton and the history of Riverton. We have an office there, and we work with both Cumberland and Androscoggin counties in terms of service delivery, and then we provide trainings statewide. So I wanted to sort of build on that video, and I also wanted to sort of build on the video, the slides that were shown by the doctor previously of what a third world country experience is. So if you were to imagine for a second that we're all sitting like this, and we're all safe, and we are all, we have a sense of community, we have a sense of a country, and then God forbid something happens, and then you're in chaotic. So Somalis and many of the African immigrants who are here just had a normal life. They had a normal life, but a life in an underdeveloped countries where you live on $1 or whatever a day, but they had peace, and so then their lives were turned upside down in a split second, not knowing, no warnings, no nothing. Not knowing what's going to come to you tomorrow, not knowing where you're going to end up, not understanding what the future is, and all of that. And then things are very chaotic, and so everything is just like so crazy, so chaotic, so scary, so full of just triumphs within, in your life. And that's how our Maine-Africa connection starts. That's how it began. For me, it began 21 years ago. I have never known of Maine, never heard of Maine, never, lived in a place where there's a lot of snow, didn't even live in a community where everybody was so white. My eyes are so used to my skin color, so cannot relate to racism, doesn't understand the difference between black and white. This whole gender, equality, women having their hair out, wearing a pair of jeans, everything is very, very, very new. And how do you come from one extreme end to the other extreme end without coaching, with no prior warnings, no nothing, and somehow you have to fit in? So imagine starting a life like that, and your destination is Maine. And so that's how my life started. And when we talk about refugees and immigrants, I also want to pay attention to that most refugees are women and children. So when you hear about a lot of refugees, this, that, really what we're talking about are women and children. Women whose roles have really changed from being homemakers, staying at home, giving birth to children, and women who were strong women who maybe had businesses, who maybe worked, who had some education, but majority of us were people, women who were homemakers. And so those women really didn't have no experiences prior to the war, and somehow we have to turn that around. I remember I come from a family of 13, and when my dad would hear that it's a girl, it wasn't, big thing, it wasn't a big deal. And then when we hear it's a boy, like they're literally slaughtering a lot of goats and cows and the celebration, and you wouldn't believe it. And I got so offended, I have 3 boys, and my oldest son, when he was 5 years old, he said, he came down the stairs one day and he said, "Mommy, I really have a problem." And I said, "What is the problem?" And he said, "Your daughters are not making my bed and they're not cleaning up my room." And I'm like, you know what, mister, over my dead body, because in this country, you know what, men actually do more and women sit back. My son, to this day, he is the sole person in that house, whether this is a DHHS or with a person in the audience, I really don't care. He actually vacuums the whole house. I'm not kidding, he's 12 years old. He vacuums the whole house. To me, that is a life skill. He needs that life skill in order for him to not be dependent on his daughters, his wife, his mother, or his sisters. So I come from that cultural background. And so when we are really talking about, instances and life experiences that begin in a very chaotic way in regards to war, many of the Africans who are here did get displaced because of a war. They got displaced because of instability, because of safety, and they were seeking for refuge in Maine. That's how they ended up here. And so it's a life filled with rape. It's a life filled with fear. It's a life filled with a lot of uncertainty, unknowns, not knowing where you're going to end up tomorrow. It's a life filled with where women are really guarded in a refugee camp because any second that girl can be abducted. It's a life filled with where you can actually shoot five different people in a day, and there is no consequences. It's a life filled with bribery. If you have money, you can literally buy a life and move forward. So many Mainers do not have that experience. Many Mainers have no idea. When you look at the pictures and the slides the doctor showed, that is a normal life. That's a life that has no war. That's a life that, you're not scared. Yes, you have other tragedies. You have health issues. You have money issues. You have all kinds of issues. But at least you have a country. So where we come from, your country is no more. So we end up coming here. We don't have to justify why we're here. We don't have to justify to any mayor or any government official or anybody the reasons as to why we're here. We're here because we were legally admitted by the United States government. And therefore, you and I have the same rights. You and I can actually vote. The only thing I cannot do is become the president of the United States. I wish I could do that. Maybe my daughters can do that. Maybe my daughters can do that. This whole journey of Africa coming to Maine is a journey that has a lot of pain. It is very painful. It's filled with a lot of courage. It is filled with a lot of resiliency. It is filled with a lot of women who don't speak the English language, who are not educated, who have no idea whether they're going to be able to feed their children or not, who are able to actually move. And I really want to emphasize on the word courage, primarily because if you really lose everything, again, imagine for a second losing everything, and then you somehow have to pick up all the pieces and move as if life is normal, that's a very courageous act to do. Then add that to a language barrier, add that to your skin color, add that to lack of education, few resources, forget about navigating the system, being Somali, wearing what I'm wearing, which is very, very obvious that I'm an immigrant. When you put all those layers of barriers, it is very, very, very hard to be able to make it. Many Mainers will probably never be able to walk in those shoes, including my children, because my children were born here. My daughters were born here. My sons were born here. I took them to Africa back in 2010 for a year for them to attend school there. And my son, who was at the time 4 years old, the first day we walked out into the neighborhood, he closed his eyes and he said, "I see dead people." That's what he's seen on television. Africans who look ashy and who look skinny, and people who are really, don't have much to live off, who don't have, a well-balanced diet, who are really struggling, will never be able to have the opportunity that we have. So how selfish of us to be able to say, how can they come into Maine and not be able to speak English? How can they come to Maine and not be able to work? How can they not come to Maine and not be able to work? Why are they freeloaders? Well, let me tell you, my friend, we're not freeloaders. In fact, we're building Maine. We are the faces of Maine. Really, you look at the census numbers in 2010, guess what? The only growth Maine got is because of the immigrants. We were producing so many children that the Maine population, including myself, the Maine population is really growing. And also, let me also mention that Maine is an old state and majority of our population is aging. It's not a bad thing. My point is, we are a large community. We need to embrace each other. We need to build our communities. And I should also mention that a lot of immigrants, in fact, all of us are very smart people. We look nice, we are really young, and we are really intelligent. My daughter is going to Georgetown. What? I never had that dream. In fact, she got into Johns Hopkins, and I said, we Africans are very big at medical schools. I wanted to be a doctor. That's the ultimate dream. And I asked her, please, because of me, can you attend this medical school so you can be a doctor just because of me, so I can brag about you? And she said, Mommy, are you crazy? I am going to do what I need to do. So my Sophia, who is going to apply to college this year, wants to be a medical student. Maybe she will, she'll fulfill my dream of being, of saying, I have a daughter who is a doctor. But I mean, we really, really, really are people who work hard. Do we have issues? Absolutely. Does any community have issues? Yes. We lack the education. We lack the understanding of the social service system. We lack the understanding of or the foundation of resources. When I look at my family, it's my husband, myself, my children. Maybe he may have some siblings, but I don't have my mother. So when you really look at that, we don't have that support system. We don't have that foundation. We don't have a generation that paved the way for us. So we're the first generation trying to pave the way for our children. And that is a lot to be asked from a person. It is a lot to be asked from a mother who has 10 children, who can never write her name, who can somehow work in Walmart, earn some money to raise her children. Many and one, and when the mayor wrote the letter, they had a flyer. That flyer had, and I don't know how they understood where we live, but the flyer had on one side a nuclear white family who actually had income and how much taxes they will pay to the government. On the other side, on the same page, on the other side, they had a Somali woman with many children and how much welfare she obtained from the government. And those flyers were actually put on our doors. They were everywhere. We were vandalized. Our cars were vandalized. Our women will not be able to walk down Knox Street without having some white men dropping their pants. We will actually go into, like you're driving a car and a car will come behind you and they will push you through the red light. That is our history. We would not be able to walk anywhere. We had to congregate women and escort them to go do grocery shopping. I had a woman asking me, why are you wearing bright colors? Do you think it's Halloween? I'm like, I don't even celebrate Halloween, neither do I know what Halloween is. But this is my culture. We were attacked. You could not ride a cab if there was a white person in there. Now you look back Lewiston today, and look, it's one large community. In fact, Lisbon Street is, a thriving street revived by the refugees and Somalis, and it has very bright colors, and we have so many businesses. So I think it's very, very important for each of us and our friends, because people who attend in this kind of events are almost the common faces that you see everywhere. The people who don't come to places like this are the people that should be our target audience. We need to reach out to those people. I don't think it's fair for my daughter to be told on a school bus, how can you afford that name brand when my dad pays for it? And I'm like, me and my husband and my entire family pays so much taxes to build Maine and its communities. When I'm presenting to a group of students and a child who's 10 years old gets up and says, let me ask you a question. Do Somalis get a government check every month? That child is innocent. He's getting that message from somewhere. So I challenge you, I urge you, you go back to wherever you come from, to friends, families, co-workers. Really, we are here to build this community. We have no choice but got displaced. Because if you have a choice, you'll stay in your own community, right? That's what your home is. But this is our home. This is the future. This is our hope. I had a picture, me pointing at the governor, and we were laughing, and someone said, how dare you point at our governor? And I'm like, he's my governor too. So, that's where we are today. I think It's very, very important for us to acknowledge that we have differences. That people have differences, people do come from different walks of lives, people have all kinds of ideologies, and that's fine. But we can agree to be one large community, build our community, and also really understand that the people who came from Africa or elsewhere and are in Maine came because they were very, very courageous, and somehow they made it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Fatuma. Good afternoon. So here we are, post-lunch, hopefully a little bit of extra coffee to carry us through for the last session. We have 4 more speakers, a very diverse group of speakers for the afternoon program. And our first speaker, Susan Roach. She's the Executive Director of the Immigrant Legal Advocacy Project, or ILAP. This is Maine's only statewide legal aid organization. The work of ILAP has been critical in the process of aiding immigrants in the legal process of navigating what can be a very difficult and complex pathway to first permanent residency and eventually citizenship. The world of immigration law, if anything, is more complex than I'm sure than it was 5 or 10 years ago. I know from personal experience from some of our young men and women who we have worked with that they wait and they wait, and they're lucky to have an organization behind them helping them navigate that pathway. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sue Roach.
Thank you. Thanks. Hi, good afternoon, and thanks so much for sticking with us after lunch. I promise to keep this short and sweet because I'm sure that with this being the last session, a lot of you are ready to get home and get on with your weekends. So I appreciate you being here. Before I get into talking about the bigger picture and ILAP's work with the immigrant community in Maine, I'm going to give you a little bit of background to tell you about how I got here and how I got into this work. So I grew up in a small town in Connecticut that was fairly sheltered and safe. And then I went on to college and I studied international relations. And I learned about this bigger world out there and developed a passion for human rights and international issues. And I decided that after I graduated from college, I wanted to go into a career where I could help people. And so I eventually went on to law school because I saw law as this institution where human rights can be protected through a justice system. And during law school, I worked for a federal judge on an immigration case, and I saw this incredibly complex immigration system, and I saw the power that it had to really affect someone's life. And I also saw the challenges for someone who can't access that system, who doesn't have a lawyer who can help them maneuver their way through these complex laws. And so I decided I wanted to go into immigration law, and I wanted to help people who didn't have money to pay for a lawyer. And so as it would happen, as I was graduating, Beth Stickney, ILAP's founding executive director, was just starting the organization because of the large numbers of immigrants who were moving to Maine and the need for immigration legal aid. And so she hired me on as the first staff attorney, and at first it was just the 2 of us. We were helping people apply for work permits and citizenship and green cards, asylum, and defending them in deportation proceedings. And in the beginning, we had a lot of clients from Mexico and Honduras and El Salvador and Sudan, and we continue to have clients from all those countries. But as the years went on, we had clients from lots of other countries, over 100 countries every year. And in the early 2000s, we saw a lot of clients coming from Somalia and Djibouti, and later on, more clients from Iraq, and more recently from Rwanda, Burundi, Congo, Angola, and other countries. And as Maine's immigrant population has grown, ILAP has grown as well, always trying to expand so that we can meet the need. We now have 9 staff members, and we serve over 3,000 people a year. But we still can't meet the needs of all the clients. And through the time of practicing immigration law, I've seen how the justice system can work, and I've seen how sometimes it doesn't work. We have these laws that are not always fair, but there are advocates out there who are always trying to change those laws and improve them. And I've seen how the system can work for someone who doesn't have access to the system, They sometimes end up getting deported and separated from their families, and they go back to countries where they're in danger, just because they didn't have access to that complex system of laws. But today I'd like to talk about how that justice system can work through the story of one of our clients, Maxwell Chikuda. It was 2003, one of my first few years as a staff attorney, and I was doing asylum intakes for people who wanted to apply for asylum. And Maxwell came into my office, and he told me this story of growing up as an orphan in Congo during the Civil War, and how the International Red Cross came and saved him, and how he struggled as a child to grow up on his own without parents, and he eventually married and had a family of his own. And then he had some political problems, and he and his wife had to flee Congo. Like many other refugees, many other people fleeing their countries, they had to leave their children back at home with family members because it was too dangerous to bring them. And so they left Congo and they fled, and they ended up in the United States and in Maine and in my office. And there he was telling this incredible story, and we ended up taking his asylum case. And we placed him with a pro bono attorney who represented him throughout the whole case. It was very complicated. It took years, and he had to go into immigration court where there were hearings and complicated legal arguments that needed to be made. There was testimony and evidence, and he really couldn't have handled this case without a lawyer. But eventually, years later, his asylum case was approved, and his family and children came to join him, and he's now a proud U.S. citizen. And throughout those years, at the beginning of his case, when he wasn't eligible to work, he was getting some assistance from the government, from general assistance. He was also studying English. Eventually, he got his work permit, and then he got a job at Maine Medical Center, and he still works there now. And he stopped getting public benefits when he got his job. And through those years while he was working, he also went to school because he didn't have an education, having grown up as an orphan and a child living on his own. He got his GED. And then he went to community college, and he got a degree in heating and air conditioning. Then he went to college to get a bachelor's degree in engineering. And then he went to the Muskie School of Public Service and got his master's degree. And then he went on to take some classes to get his PhD. And all this time, he was raising his family, and his children did really well in school. And he's this picture of this incredible American success story. But the most amazing thing about Maxwell is not his personal success story, and I think that's what a lot of us think about when we think about the immigrant story. We think about that opportunity and that success of that individual. But what was so amazing about Maxwell is that what he's given back to the community and giving back to us here in Maine. And he tells the story of how he was so impacted as a young child in his village when the elders would tell these stories of how you give your neighbor a seed and you help them grow their fields that first year, and then the next year they know how to do it themselves, so they plant their own field, and they help others. They help their neighbors, giving them seeds, and they help the elderly who can't grow their crops anymore. And he was impacted by this. He was also impacted by those people from the Red Cross who had helped him as an orphan. And he was impacted by those people in Maine who had helped him, and it helped give him that opportunity so that he could build that life for himself and his children. And so community service became something that was really ingrained in his personality. And he has continued on top of working and going to school and raising his family. He volunteers for numerous organizations, including the Red Cross. He's on boards of directors, including ILAP's board of directors. And so as Maxwell has had this journey here in Maine, I've had my own journey at ILAP, and I've gone from being the staff attorney to the executive director. And over the years, I've seen different groups of immigrants moving to Maine, and I've also seen some Mainers starting to open their eyes to this world out there that's coming to them here. I've seen them become more engaged and interested in the issues. And I've also seen how this justice system works and the importance that we all participate, because it doesn't happen on its own. And it's not just about the law. It's about making sure that people have medical care. It's about giving them a lawyer. It's about helping teach them English. It's about helping them give that step up so that they can build their own lives. And justice is that ideal. The ideal of justice is what we're all about. It's who we are. It's why our ancestors came here. It's why immigrants are coming now, and it's why immigrants will continue to come. And it's what keeps the American dream alive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue. Our next speaker, Dan Crothers. Dan is an innovative planner and thinker who has worked closely with the South Sudanese community in the last several years. Last year, he co-founded a nonprofit, the Maine-African Partnership for Social Justice, or MAPS-J, which is dedicated to the development of educational programs, both in Portland and also in medical education programs that we've actually done together in South Sudan. He has a talent for creating educational programs on a shoestring. It is possible to do work overseas sometimes without big budgets. And he's particularly adept at working, as you'll hear, with long-term partners on the ground to build after you leave, which is the most important thing when NGOs come to a country and try to assist in medical education and change. So without further ado, I'll introduce Dan. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I'd just like to take this moment also to point out that Chuck and I co-founded that nonprofit together, which has been a real treat. And we also work with Sandra Radis, who's in the crowd there with her hand up. She is Chuck's wife and our treasurer and my mother-in-law, and it's a wonderful classic family nonprofit situation. I'll talk a little bit more about that, but first of all, I want to tell you what my aim is today. My aim is to serve you with some honest self-reflection that I've done in order to better understand how I can participate in global health and how I can encourage other people to participate in global health. But first, I'd just like to start off with a joke. And Benjamin Zander, I have to give credit to him for this one. 2 merchant explorers were sent from Manchester to Africa in the 1900s, independent of each other, and they were each going to report back with telegrams. The first one, after arriving, said, "Situation hopeless. They have no need for shoes." The next one wrote back, "Glorious opportunity. They have not shoes yet." So as I said, my aim here is to serve you with some honest self-reflection, because I feel if we're very honest with ourselves about how we can best participate in global health, we can encourage those people who aren't in our position yet, and that's really who I'm speaking to today, so that they can have a better understanding of how to participate. So this is a story of a hut, the people who built it, and the real heroes of the River Kit region in South Sudan. The story, though, has a very early beginning, and it starts with me as a superhero, dressed up like Superman on Halloween. As a good little trick-or-treater, I had my haul bag, my pillowcase, but I also had a UNICEF box. And does anybody know what a UNICEF box is on Halloween? Okay, great. So I thought that was just a Canadian thing, but wrong about that. So you trick-or-treating, you'd take your box and you'd ask for change throughout your neighborhood. And the UNICEF program was raising money for children all around the world. That's all I knew at that point. But that was probably my first exposure to global health fundraising. I happily obliged. I took my UNICEF box around, my candy bag, and the success of my evening was dependent on how heavy my UNICEF box was and how many candies I had. I eagerly obliged each year, walking around the neighborhood, raising money. I felt like a little hero. My parents encouraged it. Everybody I knew was doing it. It was wonderful. As a young child, I realize now how privileged I was to be given this message, to say that you can help out, you can be that hero, you can do anything. Growing, I started to participate in leadership camps. At college, I was a resident advisor, and I graduated as a teacher. I was always looking for that opportunity to be a leader and to be a hero for a group of people. I really realize now how privileged that position was. After teaching in Montreal throughout my degree, I moved to Jakarta, Indonesia. And for the first time, I really experienced and saw what inequality and poverty on a global health scale looked like, something that I didn't get exposed to in Kingston, Ontario, where I'm originally from. This inequality and poverty was so shocking to me and so rough that I had to do something about it. I felt as though I had shifted my focus and a new path forward had begun. I had an aha moment. I thought, perhaps I could be that little Halloween hero again. Coming back to Maine, I started on a pre-med journey. I thought I could combine my education background with a degree in medicine and learn how to be a really good physician and global health leader. This path also served several human desires, which we all share, to learn and to grow, and perhaps a lower functioning desire, which is to be important. But the Maine-African Partnership for Social Justice grew out of an engagement with the South Sudanese community here through Chuck's involvement with a scholarship, the James Angelo Memorial Scholarship. And perhaps Chuck will talk more about that at the end. But that scholarship really grew out of a tragedy, but has gone on to help support several students who have gone through Southern Maine Community College, who are African immigrants. We worked with the South Sudanese community through the Asarella organization. For those of you who know Asarella, they're trying to build their second school in South Sudan. We worked with them to fundraise, to be engaged in the community, and we learned from them. We learned about their struggles here and their struggles back home. And in doing so, we really learned about their family back home. We learned about their family, we learned about the health needs, and came to realize that maternal and child mortality was a huge problem, one of the worst in the world. So, through their invitation, we went to South Sudan, and in 2012, we put on our first program. We trained 16 women from 4 different tribes on child and maternal health through a partnership with the Massachusetts General Hospital. Massachusetts General Hospital had been putting on this program in South Sudan with participation of the government and had trained about 700 people to date. We knew this program had a good foundation and good operating principles of education, reusable supplies, community engagement, training of lay persons, training of people who already had medical education, and we incorporated that into a village intertribal collaboration where we took women equally from 4 different tribes. And from this platform, we've used that to engage the community. We also helped organize the Village Health Committee, the first intertribal organization that advocated to the government on behalf of the tribes. And in doing so, we also engaged the government and asked for their support and asked how we could help them. It was after this 2012 program, in the winter of 2013, when I had a moment of frustration. We had not heard of any involvement from the South Sudanese community since we were there. I was frustrated because I felt like they weren't involved in what we wanted to do there, and that we had to bring all the resources to them. And this is where the real self-reflection came in. Because in my hubris, I thought that it was about us coming to them. And as a relatively new global health student and learner and activist, I thought that us going to them was the important part. I falsely mistook this situation and brought with me this sort of savior complex that had carried through from my Halloween hero days. And in doing so, didn't give justice and didn't get the deserved rights to the people who were there doing the hard work every day, despite socioeconomic and health obstacles. When we arrived in 2013, I was told that they'd built a hut. The 16 traditional birth attendants from the previous year had built a hut with the engagement of the community. After long hours in the field, in the heat and in the rain, with children on their backs, they built a hut. And it was a hut that would take women out of the environment and away from the elements, inside where they could give birth in the privacy and with more respect and dignity than they had been allotted before, giving birth at night, outside. This was the aha moment that I really needed, which was that it was not about me at all. I was never the savior, I was never the hero, without even understanding that that's what I subconsciously thought. When I saw the hut for the first time, 10 by 10, thatched roof, it was beautiful. I felt instantaneously transformed, happy, surprised. Don't mistake what I'm telling you though, I don't advocate for global health work to transform you. Rather, I recognize that doing global health work will transform you. When I learned about this hut, I learned that the real heroes of this region are there already, practicing every day, despite those obstacles that I've mentioned. And what they're capable of doing with the right resources and the right collaboration is beyond anything that I could help them do. And I hope that going forward, we can all take this idea with us, that it's really not about us, but we can bring to them. And I tell you this with some honest self-reflection because as people come into healthcare and global health, I think that we carry this with us. And I think it's important that we talk about this and have a dialogue about it so that we can get past it and understand how to include, young people in this process. This has implications on a much broader context for health tourism. Oftentimes this is called the white savior complex. And so one of the heroes in South Sudan, Robert Owat, who we work with, he's a South Sudanese coordinator, I asked him to actually write part of the speech. He's a real hero of ours. Chuck can certainly attest to that. And so I'm going to finish off by reading his message to you. And I've asked him to write on the topic of progress and address it to the American people. And I haven't edited this except for a few little things, but these are really his words. So a message for the American people. On behalf of the people of the Kit region and on my own behalf, I wish to greet all American people. I wish to appreciate your support, effort, and programs that you've been delivering to this needy community of Kit, of South Sudan, through the Maine-African Partnership for Social Justice. This region is made up of 4 tribes that have been living indifferently from each other for decades. But through these programs, initiated by MAPS-J, that's the acronym that we use, which have been introduced to the people without discrimination, intertribal relations and coexistence has greatly improved amongst the people. South Sudan has experienced over 20 years of war with Sudan and with itself. The situation did not allow people to settle, learn, and exercise development. 80% of the population of Kit is illiterate. A primary school has been halfway constructed and 400 children have registered to start lessons, and adults have also been registered to have evening classes on how to read and write. The community in the Niolo village has also constructed a simple health unit, grass thatched hut, in an effort to get some health supplies from the government. For the last 2 years, MAPS-J organization has conducted 2 trainings, 16 women as traditional birth attendants, and 52 men and women on first aid with solo schools. 11 villages have benefited from these projects, and MAPS-J has also been supplying vitamins and anti-malarial medication for pregnant women. The support has greatly reduced incidences of maternal and infant mortality. However, challenges remain high, such as inadequate health facility in the region, inadequate supply of drugs in the health facilities, referral cases for expectant mothers and many victims of accidents to hospitals are a big problem due to lack of transportation or money to hire vehicles. No trained health personnel in the region, lack of office space for the village health committee, and operational funds to facilitate programs. The internal conflict that erupted December 15th, 2013 has greatly affected stability, and we've experienced a high influx of internally displaced persons. In conclusion, I want to thank you all, people who are in solidarity, and for your continual support to our people. We shall continue to encourage the communities to embrace development through voluntary cooperative efforts that clearly underscores the virtue of self-reliance. God bless you all. Owat Robert. Finally, I want us all to participate in a small activity together, which I recall one of my childhood heroes, Mr. Rogers, doing at an awards ceremony. I want everybody here to take 10 seconds, I'll watch the clock, and think of a person or persons who you've worked with, either in Maine or abroad, who you think is a real hero. I'll watch the clock. Whoever you've thought about, please take them with you as you go out and continue to do your work. Represent global health work, and I hope pass on this message of the Grass Hut and the people who built it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Dr. Mawel Mabur, attended medical school in Khartoum in the former Sudan and obtained his master's degree in tropical medicine and international health from the University of London in the United Kingdom. He currently works as health promotion specialist and community health outreach worker with the city of Portland. His mother, Ann Abiye, is a member of the legislature in South Sudan. And I do look very much forward to hearing Dr. Malbur's talk this afternoon. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Please, can you turn to your neighbor and say that glad you're still here till now? Right, please. What a great afternoon, actually. We have listened to a lot of, very excellent speakers, and I'm like one of maybe the one before the last, actually going to talk this afternoon or this evening. And most of the speeches, actually, most of the things that I wanted to talk to you about actually was already been mentioned by the previous speakers. And they mentioned it even more beautifully than the way that I want to present it. But despite of that, I would like to say thank you so much, Dr. Chuck Redis, and the organizing committee also for your invitation. It's an honor to stand here and to talk briefly about progress, whether it's in my personal life or in the life of the others that we hope all of us we can achieve together. As he just summarized, I'm very proud to study in South Sudan or in Sudan. I studied at the University of Juba. It's one of the universities, actually the first university being founded in South Sudan since 1973. And I studied medicine there. And after that, I did also part of my residency actually in Jordan, which is another continent, which is Asia. I did part of my internal medicine actual residency over there. And I had the privilege to go to Europe, to London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. This is a very great institute that was founded since 1880 or 1875, something like that. They started to work with people from immigrant communities, and also they started to work actually during the period that the British Empire was the empire that the sun will never set on it, actually. So they discovered and they believe that it's very important to understand the health and to understand the culture of the other people actually in other communities. That's why they founded this great school, and then also the Liverpool School of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene. And I'm really privileged to study their medicine. And after that, I went back home also once again, actually to pay back. And I worked in a BA area where I had to support, most of the people actually at the area. And by the time that I was there working as a medical doctor or medical director at the area, a great war took place, and we had to experience how to run for our life, out of the area. With this, everything that we got actually got destroyed. It was in 2008, not too long ago, And despite of that, I moved forward. I moved with 60,000 people, and we stayed in a different place. And I had to take the responsibility, like try to discover or try to help the need of all these immigrant population. And for me, with the little knowledge that I got actually from being in the medical field and through support of other organizations, especially Doctors Without Border and also like the organization of South Sudan Ministry of Health, we really managed to help and to rescue a lot of lives over there. But I had to leave, everything behind because I have to move forward. I came to the United States, and the reason that I came to the United States, I came to the United States in 2010, and this lady is the reason that I came to the United States. She's the love of my life. What can I do? Do I have to stay there, or I have to move forward? And okay, well, we'll be together. This is our third child, as our third son, Joey, and they are now become like my reason to stay here in the United States. And it wasn't easy. Our journey wasn't easy because, we've been together for a long time, since I knew her since 1999. But in 2001, she left, and we never met again till 2006. But we remained faithfully committed to each other, communicating to each other. Thank God of all the social media. I'm so much happy about something called Skype, Great invention, So this is one of the things that like keeping us, alive and kept Skype actually saved our relationship, saved our life, all right? So, and we are here, to also move forward. She was studying applied science before coming to the United States, but right now she's actually like almost 1 year to finish her maybe nursing school at USM, and then after that she will contribute even more to the community. And as I said, I learned a lot from the previous speakers, like Fatuma just mentioned. She may not actually become the president of the United States, but I know that our children, our sons can do that. They have the opportunity with a very healthy environment that they can grow up in, and we find Maine actually like that environment. I think he get the chance even to become a president of the United States if he wants, and if he struggle, and if he work hard to achieve that goal. So life is just like riding a bicycle. In order to balance, you have to move forward. And I believe in this statement very well, except when I moved to the United States, it became like high speed, bicycle, I don't know, it is really difficult, like to keep up balancing, Imagine the speed, actually, these folks, they run through. I don't know, have you ever seen actually the indoor bicycle races? It's a huge. They really like ride in a very high speed. And I was watching actually one like 2 days ago. One of the sportmen actually of one of the athletes over there. He fell off the bike and he fell very badly. And he was like walking out, limping, and everybody was cheering, clapping for him, and he's moving forward. And and then they had to speak with him like in an interview. Glad that you made it. Okay, so what's going to be your next step? He said, wow, I can't wait just to go for my next race. He just fell off, had a very terrible, hit and blow. But again, he still want to move forward. And this is the message, really, that we want to move forward. Coming to the United States is not an end for me, except that life is really the rhythm of the life, the rate of the life here, the lifestyle is running very fast. So we have to equip ourselves with different things. I wanted to go back again. Right now, I do work with City of Portland, actually in minority health program, public health, but I used to work before with patients, and this is what I missed really. I missed, like seeing back my patients once again. And for me, in order to do that, I have to go and pass the boards. And to pass the boards, I have to sit down, and read and study hard. And to study hard, I need time. And to get time, I don't know, time is running, It's really, like to get time, that's the problem itself, I really hope that we have more than 24 hours a day, but unfortunately, we just only have 24 hours and maybe 18 minutes to finish or 10 minutes to finish my talk right now. So I need to pay back whether the community or pay back my home country and pay back all the people that, contributed in my progress. And you know, the first payback that I want to let you know, the first payback I did actually, is that myself and my wife, after having a decent job before working with the city of Portland, I worked as a program manager in one of the great mental health agency. And I had to learn a lot actually about mental health. And being in the mental health field, it's really like, you know, like touched my life, because we came from an area where most of our people are traumatized. And due to different reasons, due to war, so PTSD became like an obvious thing. So to pay back, we decided to go to the housing department. And myself and my wife, and we said, we do thank you so much for giving my wife or for giving us Section 8, but you know, we don't need it anymore. I think there will be someone may need it. We have to move forward. We have to get our own house. We have to work hard to keep that house. To actually, yes, to lose that house, it can happen. For example, we know in this economic climate, but for us, we lost a lot of things in life. That house is, despite it's precious, but it's not. We cannot compare it to any other like things that we lost it already in our lives before, and we need to catch up actually with this one. So I decided I'm working right now in the city of Portland with the minority health program, and most of the work that we are doing is among refugees and immigrants. We are like encouraging them to receive or advocating for them to receive the better health care, and at the same time we work with UNE here, University of New England, because the grant that we're working in actually like it was funded or being run or being hosted through UNE. So we are teaching and we're helping the students, UNE students, how to be cultural sensitive. You know, how to know that we have already known that, you know, Maine demography is changing. It's changing a lot, actually. A lot of new faces are coming every day to Maine. So for you being a professional that going to reach out these communities outside there, are you culturally equipped, you know, to respect their culture, to help them to move forward? And the first message that, or the message that we always tell them, please, before you judge them, before you judge us, ask us, listen to us. And then after that, we can actually move forward together. So through this great program, actually with City of Portland, we know that most of the immigrant communities actually they had problems with police with police departments, and most of them actually are traumatized before they move to United States. And because of this trauma, and most of the trauma actually was occurred from, you know, like armed forces, you know, back home, whether the military or police and something like that. So for them here to see a blue light or working with the police department or something like that, it's really a great challenge for them. Even, you know, like when somebody is driving his car, you know, like he learns some English words and everything, but when the moment he sees the blue light behind him, whatever, even the little English that he has, he will already forget about it completely. He will be in a different state completely. Panic. It's really hard, okay? And one of the great things actually we did together is the same like what Dr. Chak has been doing, actually going and pay back to back home. I work with group of other intellectual people from my area. This is Professor Abdulaziz Bior. He's one of the professors actually in one of the universities in Philadelphia. And we work together, actually try to bring out some medical laboratory, some lab, actually, medical lab, and send it back home to South Sudan before the current crisis on December 15th. So we managed to do that. We managed to send a very advanced medical lab that with a very minimal training for some people over there, and by getting their resources, they can able to operate and save a lot of lives back home. But unfortunately, and this lab was sent actually last August, but after having a war again back there at the same area, what we have sent actually just vanished, got destroyed. We really felt very sad, not because of lab, but because of the casualties and deaths that took place since that started actually since December till now. But our heart is still there. Most of us actually, we still have the desire to move back even, to pay back, try to do something back home once again. And I'm coming maybe towards the end of my speeches right now. Coming together is the beginning. Keeping together is progress. Working together is success. And this is indeed the message of today, actually. It's something very unique to have Maine-Africa connection. And this is just the beginning. Imagine if we stay together like that, what's going to happen? There will be a lot of progress, whether in our personal lives or in our communities here back in America, or even for some of us who are so ambitious to pay back. Thank you, Dr. Chuck Raiders and Dan, for this great job, actually, that you're paying the people back there. But this is still our hope and our ambitions to go and pay back. And working together like that, I think it's a great, great, great success. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Manuel. We're coming to the end of the program. Our last speaker, Dr. Frank Hubble. Dr. Hubble is actually a 1991 University of New England College of Osteopathic Medicine graduate. And he has followed his passion for emergency medicine even long before he went to medical school. He was first an EMT. This led, after graduation, to the founding of an organization called Solo Schools, which is an international wilderness medicine first aid organization in North Conway, New Hampshire. In recent years, Solo Schools has expanded its operations so that it also includes international work, and a number of countries in Africa have had programs through Solo Schools, and I am very, very pleased to introduce Dr. Hubble.
Thank you. I am so thankful to be here because I wanted to play with these letters all day. I've been looking at them going, you know, I work for the UN. This is pretty cool. Or I think we should do this. I'm sorry. I can't help it. I suffer from pathological silliness from time to time. What a great day. I have been to seminars like this all over the world, and I've never been to anything of such quality. This has just been an absolutely delightful time. I've had a great time today. What's interesting is the way I ended up being positioned, I actually get to kind of summarize the day. Part of what's really great, too, is there's this clock here ticking down. Well, I'm the last speaker, so I don't care. Part of what I do is I also preach, and I tell people, you know, we're just about done. One more verse and we'll wrap this up. What does it mean? Absolutely nothing. Doesn't mean a thing. What today's been all about, though, is a very simple thing. It's been all about developing relationships. The last quote that was put up here, coming together, staying together, it's all about developing relationships. I was kind of tasked with talking about the financial end of all this. How do we bring together governments and non-government organizations and for-profit corporations and not-for-profit corporations and private entities to kind of fund all this and make all this happen? I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. But the most important thing is this is all about relationships. This is where I scold those of us who are Americans. Those of you who are from other lands, from Africa, you don't need to know this. You already know this. As Americans, we are so bad at relationships, it is ridiculous. When you walk up to someone and you say, "How are you doing?" When was the last time you listened to their response? Shame on you. Instead, it's just how we greet people. "How are you?" Not very good. "Oh, that's good." And you just keep moving. Not long ago, I got the chance to meet one of my heroes in life. And he's a man about half my size again, so he's a big guy, and he's a black African, and he's a wonderful man who's made a huge difference in this world. And I had a chance to greet him, so I shook his hand, and I said, "I'm Frank." He goes, "I'm Bill." I said, "Bill, I can't tell you how much I enjoy meeting you." And I grabbed his leg, I said, "How are you?" And he kind of looked at me and goes, "I'm fine." And he kind of let go of my hand a little bit, and I held on to his. And I said, "You don't recognize an African greeting?" He goes, then I felt his hand squeeze mine. He goes, "Who are you?" I said, "I'm Frank Hubble." He goes, "You're that guy who does the remote medicine stuff, aren't you?" And I said, "I am, but how are you?" We then stood and talked for the next 5 minutes. It did not matter what else was going on around us. That is a classic African greeting, where you take the time to say to someone, how are you? And they go, good, and you go, no, how are you really? Really, how are you? When I meet people in the villages I work with in African and remote communities, when I get a chance, I sit down, I start writing down names, because I know when I come back to that village later, if I really truly want to make an impression, I will remember their name. As I walk into the village of Songwe, where my base is in Zambia, one of the first people almost always greets me is Pastor Dragon. It's so important that I not only remember his name, but his wife's names and the names of his 5 children, and knowing that his oldest child is sick, or has been in the past. And so the greeting takes about 5 or 10 minutes, but it's the establishing relationships that makes all the difference in the world. Nothing progresses, nothing happens without that relationship. You can go and meet with extremely important people, government officials, ministers of health, etc. But until you develop a relationship, nothing happens, and that relationship will be tested. As Americans, it's something we have to learn to practice. We have to realize how important it is, and we need to start taking the time to practice it. Then when you greet people and you say, how are you? Actually take the time to stop and listen and kind of look at them, and you'll stun them. Really, you're not having that good a day? Why? And they'll go, I'm sorry, were you listening? I really was. So we have to learn. It's all about relationships, developing relationships. It was mentioned earlier about humility. It's all about humility. Humility means you don't talk about yourself. You talk about the other person. Where are you from? What do you do? To tell them about your family. In the process, you're developing a relationship. You're getting to know them. And it's the most important thing in the world. I've been very fortunate in all the years that we've taught, and we've taught all over the world, we've had a chance to develop relationships. Those relationships have grown into bigger and bigger relationships, to the point where now it's not uncommon as we travel around the world to get introduced to presidents of countries. The very first time I was in Rwanda, I had a chance to meet President Kagame, and through President Kagame, we were able to do more work in Rwanda. And it's kind of nice that as you're trying to get some work done, and working with Agnes, the Minister of Health, one day we're trying to get some work done. We weren't doing very well, and she finally said, well, with other people around the room, she goes, aren't you supposed to be at President Kagame's this afternoon for a cookout? I said, yes, I am. Well, suddenly the tenor of everything changed. It's kind of like, oh, you're a friend of President Kagame's. Oh, and it wasn't because of his friend, it's because it's a way of introducing people. When someone I know who's an African introduces me to a group of other Africans, automatically I'm okay. If they know me, they trust me, I have a relationship with them, then I have a relationship with everybody else. So I bring it up because as you work in this world and you start going around the world doing global anything, but we're here about global health and global relationships, it's all about developing relationships. That's what this day is all about. And I'm so thankful that Dr. Chagradis and Ann and everybody else has done a phenomenal job of pulling this together, and great speakers, and having the chance to develop a relationship with them, and then with each other, and then for the Maine-Africa connection. The kind of example of how things work in this world, we have these government organizations. Government organizations have money, and they collect money and they want to spend it and achieve different things, quite often for their own self-interest of the government. And then we have NGOs, non-government organizations. NGOs, by definition, have to be nonprofit. They have to be run by a board of directors. The board of directors decides how the business is going to be run, who they're going to hire as their CEO, CFO, CMO, CEO, et cetera, all these individuals. And those individuals don't sit on the board of directors is separate, that runs the organization. And NGOs can be very, very large. They can also be very, very, very small. Then there's classic, simple nonprofit organizations, and then there are the for-profit world. In the for-profit world, we get the massive public corporations that have stock that's exchanged on Wall Street and stock market. You get the private corporations, which can be quite large as well, but they don't have stock. They're not available publicly. It's held by a group of individuals or by a family. Down through your simple corporations, your subchapter S and subchapter Cs, all the things you kind of don't need to know. But here's an example of how the whole thing works. One of the entities that we work with, that we have developed a relationship, is with the Hospital Albert Schweitzer in Haiti. A gentleman was of the Carnegie Mellon family, he was a Mellon. Went to medical school, and after he finished medical school, he had on his heart that he wanted to go to Haiti and open a hospital. So he did. Eventually, his son, Ian Ross, ended up running the hospital. The hospital is now a little over 50 years old. Ian ran it up until a year ago when he turned it over to another gentleman, the CEO. So the Hospital at Schweitzer is not just a hospital within the community, it has a heart for their community. What are they going to do to help raise their community up? Well, one of the things they did, probably 10 years ago now, or even longer than that, is that they developed a relationship with Cornell University. And through that relationship with the Department of Agriculture, they got them to come down to their part of Haiti and say, what can we do here to kind of improve, or what crops can we grow? Make a long story short, they came up with how to terrace the hillsides, and on the terraces to plant trees, a type of white cedar, which in the span of 10 years grows to maturity, can be harvested. And then as it grows, you plant different crops underneath, as a shade is created underneath them, depending upon the amount of sun the crops want or don't want. And they're multiple layered tiers, and you plant one every year. So 10 years later, you harvest the first years, and then you replant it, and now you've got this constant crop that's replaced. Well, that wood that comes off is then brought down into the city where the hospital of Schweitzer is, where it's milled into lumber, and then the lumber is then fashioned into furniture. So to make this whole thing happen, first you got the hospital Albert Schweitzer, who was able to get funding, through NGOs, through Cornell University, to bring some folks down to do some research. They were able to get funding to purchase the tools to have the equipment there. Then they said to the people in the community, if you want to be part of this, you have to come and take some courses over a span of a year to learn how to do this. At the end of a year, you'll then sign a contract and we'll go to work. Then they get volunteers to come down who are willing to help build these terraces, help plant the trees, and get the whole cycle started. Meanwhile, in comes a business who is going to train people in how to build furniture out of this wood. So they build the shops, they bring in the equipment, most of it's hand equipment, not power equipment, because you can't rely upon the power, and they teach them how to make the furniture and the different types of articles out of these trees. Then, once that stuff is made, then it has to be marketed and sold abroad, primarily in the United States, to then raise the money to pay for all this thing to go on. The way it becomes sustainable is it went from government-based to NGO-based to nonprofit-based, then into the private world of the private corporations who said this is the opportunity to create jobs, create business. So the Haitians own the business, make the money, but the seed money came from private corporations out of North America, which seeded them up, that then buys the furniture from them and then turns around to sell it to make a profit. So in the process, you've got this wonderful line of, from government organizations, non-government organizations, to the for-profits down through. And you cannot be sustainable without that combination. Eventually, as DeBassamoya would put it, it all comes down to business. That business is sustainable, making, it gives people value, it gives people worth, they make a profit, they contribute to their communities. For those of you who want to read a very, very powerful book, DeBassamoya is a woman. She has her PhD in macroeconomics through Harvard. She's from Lusaka, Zambia, a wonderful, delightful individual, and she's written a couple of very important books. One of them is called Dead Aid. She's the one who, about 6 years ago now, wrote this book about how aid destroyed Africa and what was behind it. When it first came out, it was very unpopular and lots of people shot it down. Well, 3 years later, it's now held up as the standard, so is the Bible. This is correct. We have to be really careful about aid, of just simply giving people something. It's not that they have to earn it, it's that we want to be thinking in terms of something that's sustainable. How do you make things sustainable? How do you create business to help change society and make things sustainable? So Dead Aid. The other one she wrote most recently is called How the West Was Lost. And it's a book about us as Americans and how our economy has been destroyed and what we're doing wrong and why if we don't change, our economy will collapse and cave in. If you want to read it, it's a really, really interesting book. But DeBassamoya is an absolute delight. Most of the major economists now look at the world, look at it as this combination of businesses. And so the first thing that has to happen is relationships. You have to develop relationships with one another. You have to take the time to listen. You have to be humble, and have the heart, to be there, and not for yourself. It's not about me. It's about the people that we work with. So number one. Number two has to be integrity. My personal hero is Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda. For him, it's all about integrity. Everything in life is all about integrity. And he told Rwanda, as a nation of integrity, we're going to turn down aid, we're going to be all about integrity. If we are, then we can become the best country ever in the planet Earth ever. Well, 20 years ago, it was the worst country ever on the planet Earth. Today, it is indeed the best. It is remarkable what change they've made in 20 years, both in income for everybody, raising everything up. They've increased the life expectancy 1 year for every year for the past 10 years. We've increased life expectancy by 10 years. So it's all about relationships, it's all about integrity, and then you have to look at things from the aspect of sustainability. As we go in the work that we do, how is it going to be sustained? We took the medical model and we flipped it upside down. Not long ago, I was actually at a Rotary doing a talk, raising some money to do some programs in Africa. And Rotarians love to give you money, and I love to take it. And I got done explaining what we're doing, that we're going to be doing some courses in Zambia, and somebody said, what do you teach? And I said, well, for example, wound care. Wounds are very, very common. Well, 1 out of 3 people in Zambia are HIV positive. And therefore, if you get a wound, if you don't know how to properly clean the wound out and keep it clean, you can die within 3 or 4 days of the opportunistic infection. So part of what we teach is how do you control the bleeding? Once you get the bleeding under control, how do you properly clean the wound out? Then how do you keep the wound clean, so it heals up? How do you splint a fracture? How do you straighten out a little fracture? How do you reduce a dislocated shoulder? Because they don't have medical care, so you got to teach them how to do all these things. And I'll tell you, nobody learns quicker than Africans. It's phenomenal how quick. The funnest thing for me about teaching in Africa is you can't do this. You can't lecture. Because I'll do a lecture and I'll say, everyone understand? They'll go, Because every one of them wants to tell me what they think is going to make me happy. They want me to be happy. So they're going to lie to me. Oh, yeah, I got it. They learn by doing. You've got to do. So everything is taught experientially, which for me as an educator is really, really fun. So then they looked at me and he said, so you do all this in Africa? And he said, wow. He literally goes, are they really that stupid? And so now I'm pissed. But I smiled and I said, you're stupider. And he goes, I am not. And I said, somebody's at your house and they fall down your flight of stairs and they break an arm. What are you going to do about it? And he goes, I pick up my phone and call 911. And he goes, okay. And I said, you have no idea. He goes, I have no idea what to do. I said, right, without EMS in this country, without 911, you're hopeless. You have no idea what to do. If you don't have a 911 to respond, what are you going to do? And he goes, call you. I said, that's fine too. I said, but that's the whole point. So we took the medical model and we flipped it upside down. So instead of like in this country, we've got Maine Medical Center worth billions of dollars, and then the larger regional hospitals around that, and then the community hospitals around that, and then the community health centers, and everything kind of flows uphill. We took the model and flipped it upside down. We said, long before we spend $1 billion building a huge, massive referral center that can do everything in the world, first we need to teach everybody how to take care of themselves. We need to teach everybody what to do if someone's knocked unconscious. We need to teach everybody how to maintain an air. We need to teach everyone how to control bleeding, how to clean out a wound, do a whole bunch of simple, basic things. And it takes me basically 16 hours or 2 days to do the initial program, our initial geometric program. And by doing that, we're now empowering them. I'm giving them the skills. Some people, it irritates them because there's power in medicine. And when we do this, we take some of the power away from some of the people who kind of held it. But it becomes, for what we're trying to do in places like Rwanda and Haiti, other places, is let's get everybody trained. The example I use is in Haiti. We were in Haiti for 7 weeks after the earthquake. And the example I've used is, think how different it would have been if all those Haitians in Port-au-Prince knew what to do after the earthquake instead of stopping. When Katrina happened in this country, for me personally, it was a huge disappointment because I saw 25,000 people in an arena in a big stadium in downtown New Orleans with floodwaters all around them, and no one knew what to do to take care of one another or themselves. All they knew was to sit. Once they evacuated them out and they put them in other stadiums, in places like San Antonio and Houston, Texas, you go in there and everyone is just sitting on the end of their stretcher waiting for someone to bring them something, waiting for someone to bring them food, bring them entertainment, get them a job, whatever. We got to flip that model around. And so our goal, we go into the remotest part of the world to train people in how to take care of themselves. And out of that, it organizes into then community health centers, and it rises up from there. That's our model. We've been pretty successful. We just passed our 300,000 number. I've trained over 300,000 people worldwide now. And that's not bad. That's not shabby and stuff too. So the take-home point I wanted to make was everything that everyone's talked to you about today boils down to one thing and one thing only: the skill of developing a relationship, of being humble. When you greet someone, you shake their hand. You don't just shake your hand, you hold it, and you look them in the eye and you say, how are you? When they say, I'm fine, you say, no. Really, how are you? I'm listening. You'll stun people. And it's one of the things I had to get used to in Africa is when I'm walking down, if I'm in South Sudan walking along with my good friend, and we're talking, we hold hands. It's a habit. Well, in Portland, Maine, if I walk down the street holding Chuck Radis's hand, what are you guys going to think? Well, there's a couple of gay guys. What's wrong with them? No. Instead, it's when you're talking, it's about that relationship. There's a physical connection there. You're talking, you have a relationship. That's what Africa, that's what working around the world has taught me, that I didn't know how to develop relationships. And I thank God that I've had that chance to learn that. And that's my take-home message for you guys this afternoon. With all this stuff, whether you're in NGOs or for-profits, whatever, it's all about developing the relationships, it's all about integrity, and then think about sustainability. And that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Just a few last comments before I let you go for the day, and we all so much appreciate so many of you being able to stay for the entire conference. First, I want to again thank the many, many volunteers, primarily associated with the University of New England, who just did yeoman's work. They kind of worried and fixed every little possibility here. It's gone off really, really well. I hope everybody enjoyed lunch, got enough coffee to drink. First, I'd like to give them a round of applause about how well they did with this. I think the speakers that were decided on, through a process have been really great. I have just one request and then one last comment. The request would be, you all have pencils and papers there, and that would be, if it moves you, if you wanted to write down a comment or two about either what was good about this conference or what might be improved next year, and we are hoping to have a similar program like this next year, leave it. Do we have a place to put it? We have a place to put that near the door on your way out. Some of these, maybe this went a little too long, maybe we should have stopped after lunch. It's hard to know. We'll kind of get a consensus about what seemed to work. I hope that some of you perhaps have made some contacts, been made aware of people doing work in maybe a complementary area to something you're interested in, or perhaps something that you're already involved in. I'm constantly surprised in the state of Maine, how many different groups there are either doing medical work or immigration work, how many organizations, African organizations that have their own organizations doing wonderful work. And I would just leave you with a last thought to dream, do good work, rest, dream again, and do good work. Thank you.